We're starting to get closer to where we have a decent amount of history with that. Prior to the last 3 years, I believe it is, the contractor was doing a certain portion and we were charging for everything that we had. We started modifying that we only charge for particular projects and being much more accurate in that theory. We discussed this 3-4 years ago. So the history that we're gaining now should help us in projecting that.
And we have increased that budget for next year as well.
Closer to budget.
Yep.
Okay.
The next slide will look at the local option sales tax performance through September. So the graph illustrates, it has it broken down by month. Again, the blue is the budgeted amount versus the orange, which is the actual. So we'll look at a few months here. So for January, we budgeted $507,000 in local option sales tax revenue. We received $521,000. Then in February, we budgeted $580,000 and we received $723,000. We'll skip forward to May, where we budgeted $435,000 and we received $706,000. And lastly, we'll look at August, where we budgeted $653,000 and we received over $1 million. So through September, we've budgeted $5.1 million for local option sales tax revenue, and the actual that we've received is just over $6.2 million. I looked back at last year to see where we were at this point in time. We're $1 million over where we were last year, which is about a 20% increase.
So I only have one point of disappointment, and that's April. I want to know why we didn't make budget in April.
I can answer that.
That's remarkable. It's actually, what's happening is remarkable.
Yes, it is remarkable.
Pardon me? Mr. Bray has a theory.
No snow,
No snow.
no, and less tourism related to snow related.
But we had 80-degree weather. They should have been coming up early for the lakes.
So the way that these numbers play out, though, they are a 2-month lag. So what you're seeing in April is actually February activity in the economy. Because they'll do February activity, they file that with the state processes, and then submits it to us the month after that. So we don't see February's until March. That's why you see August is so high. That's relating back to June and July. September is going to outpace August. That's relating back to July.
So I'm not really disappointed. I'm very happy with what's happening
I know.
with the lost
That's interesting.
dollars. So very
So-
good. Go ahead.
No, I don't have, I told you I wasn't going to ask you any questions.
Go ahead.
Any questions on the revenue side of things before we jump into expenses? If not, the next slide shows the highway fund expenses through September. Budgeted, we have $14.3 million, and actual, we're at $14.8 million, which brings our variance percentage at 103%. Some areas to note there, personnel services has a variance of 94%, and that is due to some resignations and vacancies we had at the beginning of the year, which has since been filled in the spring of this year. Services and charges at 107% variance, and that is due to the timing of our contractor pay requests and our local partner reimbursable costs. And I have a slide, the next slide has a better breakdown of those contractor fees, so you can see the difference per month by budgeted versus actual. And then supplies and materials is at 87% variance, and that has to do with our material stockpiles, fuel, and repairs, maintenance, and services trending lower than what we had anticipated.
So a quick question on that, and this may be, are we going to see fuel prices go up? Are we filling our tanks now so that we can mitigate some of those costs? I hear that fuel costs are going to go up, and then the supply chain for some of the repair stuff that you need, is that going to be an issue going forward? And perhaps increased costs that we didn't anticipate originally, but because of supply chain stuff and just the inability to get it, the cost may go up?
All I can speak to that I know of, and maybe Joe, our fleet manager, can speak to other areas, is that when we look at our 2022 budget, we do take all that trending into consideration. And so we do try to factor in what we're anticipating the cost of fuel to be. The reason our fuel variance is low for this point in time is the snowfall season that we did not have earlier this year. So our trucks weren't out there plowing as much as they may have been in the past. Joe, do you have anything more to add on fuel?
Yes, so for the beginning of this year, our fuel usage has been down just because we didn't have that snowfall. So that number does increase when that happens for us, of what we budgeted for. But we do take that into consideration as far as the cost of fuel every year. This year has been considerable. From the beginning of the year to now, we've increased almost $1 in expense in fuel. And that gets huge for us, the amount of fuel that we use. So our expenses are gonna start going up as this fuel increases. So it's inevitable, it's gonna happen.
Okay,
We don't have much room for stockpiling. We do have some that we can downtown at the Laurel Street location, we could do for diesel, but if that sits there, I don't want it to sit too long because that goes sour fast. So I don't want to stockpile a whole ton. But we usually are keeping our tanks full right now, all the way through winter. They usually stay pretty full, so.
okay. Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
The next slide is our construction and maintenance project update. So for 2021 in our highway improvement plan, we had 26 projects that we embarked upon for a total cost of approximately $12.7 million. At the end of September, 9 of those projects have been finalized, which is 35%. We have 12 projects that are substantially completed at 46%. And so there's some punch list items that are still yet to be done, as well as finalized paperwork that needs to be completed before those can be finalized. And finally, we have 5 projects that are in progress, which is 19%. So as you know, when we explain why we have our variances in highway, we use the word timing a lot. Timing of contractor payments, timing of funding sources. So the chart on this slide shows you the contractor fees by month. The blue, again, illustrates the budgeted amount by month that we budget for those contractor payments, and then the actual is in orange. So we'll look at a couple of months here. So for January, we budgeted $0, but we actually expensed $62,000. In February, we also budgeted $0, but expensed $403,000. We'll move forward to June, where we budgeted over $2 million and expensed $4.8 million. And then our last month of September, where we budgeted $1.6 million and we expensed $372,000. So we do our best to seasonally allocate the month that those expenses are going to be incurred, but it's difficult to do because we can't predict what Mother Nature is going to do. So this chart hopefully will help you to better understand when we use that word timing, why we use it so much the way we do. So contractor fees year-to-date budget is at $9.5 million, and the actual expenses that we've incurred thus far is at $10.7 million, which is approximately 84% of our overall cost. Any questions on expenses?
Nope.
If not, the final slide that I have for you is the fund balance breakdown. At the end of September, the fund balance for the highway fund is just over $13.6 million. And the pie chart breaks down the different categories that make up that fund balance. So we'll start at the top and we'll go clockwise to committed at 0.2%. The committed category is for our entrance permit deposits. So when a customer comes in and applies for an entrance permit, we require a permit fee, but we also require a deposit. And that deposit is what makes up this committed portion of the fund balance. And for dollar amount, that's just over $20,000. The minimum is at 12%, and that's per the county's fund balance policy. And that dollar amount is $1.6 million. Then we have the restricted at 61%, and that is our lost funding. And as you know, there's statutory requirements, and that's why it's considered in that restricted category. There are statutory requirements and county board resolutions that dictate how we can use those funds. And that dollar amount is just over $8.3 million. Currently, we have $3 million of that $8.3 million dedicated to the County Road 115 project. That'll be coming forth in the next few years. And finally, the unrestricted fund balance portion of 26%, and that is at $3.5 million, and that is for operational purposes.
Any questions, concerns? Okay, thank you very much. It was a good
Thank you.
report.
Thanks for your time.
And Malika, just want to get that straight. But thank you very much. You did a nice job.
Thank you.
Next item is our 2022 CIP budget discussion. We've set aside 6 hours for this particular item.
I'll take the first 4.
So each of you submitted projects that you had questions about. We did get some answers written, provided to you that I was able to send to you yesterday, but we do have staff on hand today to talk through each of the projects that were called out. We can start by either going from the top of the list and just working our way down, or we can start where you would like to go. I'll lean towards the top of the list.
Any preferences? All
right.
right, then I'm going to start with, if I can, I'll start with the roof issues that
Okay.
I had some questions about. So, John, if you'll step up.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners.
So my question, John, is there's a couple items that you have on the list and for roofs, and we're looking at putting what and I'll characterize it as a Band-Aid fix for 3 to 4 years. Are these roofs that this will, apparently we're going to eventually have to redo the roof, is that correct?
Correct.
Is that where we're headed?
That's where we're headed.
But because we have other priorities and other roof projects currently, where are we at with the other roofs? We have many roofs in this.
We have many roofs, and in the big picture, every roof on this campus, and including our highway building, is going to need replacement in the next 4 to 7 years. So we have a big roof expense that is coming. We have that spread out, and we have that in our strategic facilities plan, which will be going to my leader probably the end of next month. And you'll be able to see how we have these roof replacements staggered over the next 5 to 7 years.
Okay, so currently, we're doing the Band-Aid fixes to get to where we can implement this 5-year plan? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and we're extending the life of the roof by making the investment this year or in 2022 in the roof at the jail and the roof at the highway. Those are the two roofs that are currently giving us the most trouble. We're going to do a stripping process around the edge. It's a ballasted roof. It's EPDM material, so it's a rubber membrane with rock on top. Over the years, that material shrinks and pulls away from the sidewalls of the soffits, and we can go in and do a process where we cut that, relieve it, take some of it out, and patch it in. And it's an industry-proven process, and it has good results.
So when you get to where you'll be replacing those roofs, is there a better approach, or is this the standard out there?
When we start talking about replacing roofs, we have a lot of options. In today's market, if we were to replace, price out in the same roof that's on there, a ballasted EPDM roof for the jail, in today's market, that's about a $590,000 roof replacement. Highways in today's market would be about $380,000. So it's an expensive process, but at some point we will have no choice. But the choice now, I think, is my recommendation is that we make the repairs, we get a little bit more life out of the roof, and that it gives us several years to come up with a plan for roof replacement.
Didn't answer your question.
Pardon me?
I don't think you answered the question. Steve,
Okay.
I think, was asking about, is there other options other than that rubber membrane?
Absolutely. So
Well, that's what,
an EPDM roof, ballasted roof with rock on top, you can get that in a 15 or a 20-year warranted roof, depending on the thickness of the material that you select and what you do with the insulation underneath it. So we can upgrade the roof from where it's at now. We can go to a 30-year roof, which is an adhered roof, which we have on the sheriff's office. That basically doubles the price. You would have from a $600,000 roof replacement to a $1.2 million. It's a superior roof product, but it does not double the warranty. So it doesn't go from you double the price, you have a 15-year warranty at the lower price, you double the price, but that doesn't necessarily give you a 30-year warranty. You're going to get a 25-year warranty. But industry shows that those roofs last 30 to 35 years on an adhered roof.
Okay. I'm just curious, we're spending, what, $50,000 on on the one for the, where am I at here, for the jail, and the highway one, I don't find that real quick here, but I know it's in there.
60,000.
60, so $110,000 we're spending for the Band-Aid fix. And so my question then is, are we not prepared to do a quality fix or just the Band-Aids?
The stripping process is, in industry, is considered a quality repair. They're not going to warranty it for 10 years, but it is a common practice and has produced good results.
Okay, but my question is, we're spending that $110,000.
Correct.
So the question is, why are we not going to the complete fix, even though it's more expensive, and I understand that? Are we trying to buy time to put the dollars together to do that more quality fix, the entire roof?
I would say it's two-part, is we're trying to make a repair so we have more time to plan for that funding request and to extend the life of the roof. So we're going to extend the life of the roof by doing this process, and it's pretty accepted in the industry that's your, when you start seeing the kind of problems that we have, that's your first and most economical approach, is to do this stripping process and buy yourself some time.
Okay. and-
Mr. Chair? Oh, this isn't a Band-Aid. It's not.
It's a repair.
This is the industry standard way that you extend the life of flat roofs. They all shrink, they all pull away from the sides, and for a relatively low cost, you're going to get 3 to 6 more years out of that roof. And so it's about the cost of preventing water from infiltrating on an annual basis. Take the annual cost of that project, divide it by the life of the roof, and then take this cost and divide it by 5, 6 extra years. And what you find is this is the lowest cost way. So you use up that roof. Use it all up. Don't take off a roof that you could extend the life of for less cost per year.
So you're doing this for 3 to 4, 3 to 6, whatever that number is in there, and can you only do that once?
Technically, you could do it more than once. Typically, you do it once, and by the time that process would need to be done, the roof's going to be at a point where it needs to be replaced.
Okay, so, and you talk about the edges, so all your mechanical equipment up there, those are all considered edges, and it's pulling away from those items also up there? So it's more than just the perimeter?
Yes. And the highway roof and the jail roof are the two roofs giving us the most trouble right now because they have a lot more penetrations on the roof than all of our other facilities. The jail in particular has more penetrations through the roof than all of our other facilities combined.
Okay. I appreciate your sticking with me on this one.
So how can the jail, wasn't that and community services built about the same time?
The jail, community services, and judicial center roofs were all put on at the same time. We're having limited, very few problems with the community services roof. We're having no problems with the judicial center roof. Most of our problems are with the jail roof. And that's related to all those penetrations. We have skylights, and we have mechanical equipment, and we have 260 beds over there with all these events coming through, and we have exhaust fans to purge mace when those kind of events happen. So when you have that many penetrations on a roof, and that roof material is not adhered, it's shrinking and growing all the time with the weather, you're going to have more problems.
So when have we done a total replacement? When's the last time we've replaced a roof that?
The last total replacement was the sheriff's office, but as far as the facilities that were constructed in 2015, those are all new roofs. They're all the original roofs, excuse me.
Okay. I think we can move away from roofs at this point.
That's one of the most exciting things we get to talk about.
While you're here, how about the tractor? That was the top of the list, I believe.
Yeah, I was going to suggest, since John's up here, there's quite a few on here that he can talk towards. if you want to just have him go through all of the items
Sure.
that we have.
Let's do that, maybe that's a better approach.
Okay. We'll start with adding one John Deere tractor to the fleet that is primarily used for snow removal. When we took on the City of Brainerd contract, we did not add any equipment to our snow removal fleet. We took on 3 of their facilities, and last year in a negotiation, we added a 4th facility, which was the library. So we have increased our snow removal requirements by 40%. So it breaks down to, I won't go into square footage, but the amount of time we spend breaks down to about 40% of our snow removal effort, and 60% is for Crow Wing County. What has happened with just having the 2 tractors and taking on an additional 40% is the crews coming in earlier, we're spending more on overtime, and the delivery of that service, we had the 2 tractors just for Crow Wing County, now we've included another 40% that we have to service. That service time has grown, and the overtime has grown. So by adding the 3rd tractor, we will compress our service delivery, we will reduce our overtime, and that will allow staff to not come in quite as early.
Any questions on this one?
Do we have a third body to operate that machine then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll put me in it if they have to. No, we have plenty of
okay.
labor, so.
I think
Depends
you-
on the event, on an average event, we have plenty, we have 8 technicians, so that's fine. When you get into an all-day 16-inch snowstorm, it's a challenge. But
John, as we take on the contract with the city of Brainerd, are we being compensated fairly on that?
yes, we are. We track labor hours on a quarterly basis. We track expenses. We sit down and discuss that with the city of Brainerd on a quarterly basis. We will enter a negotiation with the city of Brainerd after the first of the year, which I have notified them of. Our costs are going up, and they understand that no contract stays at 0 forever.
In talking with the city of Brainerd, I know that they appreciate that contract. You also mentioned in the notes that if one of those 2 current ones break down, we're going to have trouble providing the quality of service that we want for that contract, but also for our own facilities. So personally, I think that this is probably a good purchase, and I think that we want to make sure we can deliver what we say we're going to deliver. Any other concerns, questions? Let's move on, John.
The next item is the clothes dryer replacement at the jail. There are currently 4 gas-fired dryers at the jail. We have them on a replacement schedule based on our experience of when they wear out. Every 2 to 3 years, we replace the oldest dryer. So over the course of 10 to 12 years, all 4 of the dryers will get replaced. So it's let's replace them in a staggered mode, so we incur the expense of $12,000 or $13,000 every 2 to 3 years, instead of letting them all run bad at the same time, trying to keep them running, and then replace them all and come and have to ask for $50,000 or $60,000 at one time. So it's a staggered replacement approach.
So this kind of gets into the weeds, and I don't know how those machines work, but how are you tracking that? Say you purchase this new one this year, and that's the one that gets the most initial use. And so the one that's 5 years old is sitting there and gets fewer hours on it. So the new one ages out faster because of use.
Right.
Are you just judging on the years that it was when it was purchased versus the use?
Years are where we start. Then we go look at runtime. We look at so all these dryers are assets in our maintenance connection software. So we can go back and see how much money we've had to put into a particular dryer, what's been failing. And maybe that dryer is not quite 12 years old. Maybe that's a 9-year-old dryer. So at that point, we would make a decision to say, this is not necessarily the oldest dryer, but it's the dryer that's giving us the most trouble and most expense, and we would decide that that's the one that needs to go.
Okay. Questions on that one?
Okay. Cross Lake Lighting, This is a request to continue LED lighting upgrades at the Cross Lake facility. ROIs typically on LED lighting replacement is about 3 years from an energy conservation standpoint. So anything we do on campus or any of our other facilities, the payback is about 3 years from an energy saving standpoint. I did put a comment in here, though, that Cross Lake facility is not maintained to what I would consider Crow Wing County standards. And there are sometimes emergencies and shortfalls in their infrastructure. And there's a possibility that this could be requested to be reallocated to something else as we get into next year.
Having driven up there once, you know, I don't know if we're trying to create security around that particular facility, but in driving through there, and I see a fence out there that extends out past the roadway, but it ends, I could drive my car around that. So there's no security. I would question why there's even a fence there, to be honest. And if we're going to have a fence, then it should be there for the purpose of protecting the facility. And I don't see that doing this at this time. So then I question, why would we put lighting into this when really there's no security there anyway? And I don't know that a light would stop them. I think the fence would stop people more than a light would.
This is more of the actual facility, internal lighting.
Internal
In
lighting?
the shop, in the garage, and in the office areas, where we would replace fluorescent lighting with LED lighting.
Okay, and
Not
that would've been-
necessarily adding lighting, but upgrading to more energy-efficient lighting.
That would have been a good note to have in there, though, that it was internal lighting and not yard lighting, perhaps.
Noted.
Because I was thinking of yard lighting.
Okay.
No, John, this is something you don't necessarily support doing at this time?
Pardon me?
You don't necessarily support doing this at this time?
Oh, I support doing it. I have concerns that there will be a more urgent need that arises.
Historically, with the Cross Lake facility, we have been putting in 30,000 for lighting, and year over year, it gets pulled off to the side because there's a much more urgent repair need in that facility, because they do not maintain it to our level. It is owned by the city of Cross Lake. We are a lease tenant with contractual obligations to assist in repair and maintenance. We don't get to control when we replace or repair everything. So this funding seems to get shifted around a lot to allow us to keep that facility operational.
If we're leasing, why does the responsibility of the changing lights over to us?
Pardon me?
If we're leasing this space from the city of Cross Lake?
This would be a shared project, so the way the contract is written is we participate in 53% of the billing, and they take the other 47%. So this contract, just for your information too, our lease is expiring in 2023 in October. There is a team at Crow Wing County that will begin meeting next month to talk about the path forward on this particular agreement.
So have they agreed to the 47% or whatever the cost share on this?
Yes, they have been very cooperative and willing to share in the cost on the things that we recommend.
Are they sharing the cost of the 30,000, or is that our share?
That would be our share, and then they would add in addition to that.
Okay.
So what, if something else comes up, how do we handle that? That we apply the 30,000 towards, are there still cost shares?
Yeah, they will still cost share. If something else comes up, I will sit down with the leadership up there, and we'll have a discussion about what we believe the priority is over what is
How
actually.
old is that facility?
It's about 20 years old,
Okay.
close to it.
Commissioner Coring?
County Engineer Bray, so I guess I'd like to search your mind if there's been any thoughts, being just what we heard right now, and this is the first time I've ever heard that not really kept up to our standards. Have you given any thought to us finding our own property and putting a facility there? Is there any thoughts about that, or none at all?
We have not.
No.
I know that, as John mentioned, it's actually November 4th. I think we're going to meet internally first. It's on the city's radar screen, of course, also about the lease agreement moving forward. And I think just thinking out loud with John and others that'll be involved with that maybe we need to clean up some of these relationships and better define how budgeting and maintenance and those things are going to happen moving forward. I know there's been some frustrations over the years, both ways. Frustrated with us, we're frustrated with them. The relationship's getting better, but we've never talked about yet finding another place. And I think
I was just wondering if that was on your radar, because I know we do have our own facility in Pine Center, and we have our own facility in Deerwood, and, you know, so I just want to make sure that
we have a great relationship with them. It's just equipment's getting bigger, our fleet's getting bigger, and their fleet's getting bigger, and it is getting a little difficult to move stuff around there, particularly during snow and ice season. So I anticipate a really good, robust discussion about that, and I think we're going to take the opportunity to clean up some of these challenges and understandings that we have.
And the reason why I asked that is, you know, I think about when we had our contract with them, when we were doing the planning and zoning, it worked great at first, and then as it went on, the county board decided that, you know what, this just really isn't working anymore. It's the same thing with our contract. It kind of makes sense working together with the city of Brainerd, but if it gets to a point where it doesn't make sense for us anymore, then we have to axe that contract. So I just think now that our lease agreement is coming up, I think we need to give it a lot of thought. Not that I want to spend a whole lot of more money to buy property and build our own facility, but if it's not working, because you have different elected people than you have here, and if we can't come to a resolution together, then we just gotta.
Can I just clarify that this is not as bad as maybe you're characterizing it? It's just, there's some little things to shore up in terms of if a light switch burns out, who's coming? Are they hiring somebody local to come, or are they going to call John's staff to come and do it? And we might have something to say about what's most cost effective. Of course, we have a response component too. So I just wanted to be clear that it may not be as bad as you're characterizing it. It's just, we're going to take this opportunity over the next, starting next month, over the next year, to try to make it better. So
I think from an operational standpoint, the facility works really well for us. Granted, its size of equipment is getting larger and it's more confined than what it was before. It's more the facility maintenance side that we kind of struggle with, and having that same idea of what the building's
How long will that potential lease be? The potential extension of that lease? Is it
Right now, there's an option at 2023 that we can do an annual renewal if we choose, or we could negotiate a longer agreement if we'd like.
I mean, we're not going to sign something that's 25 years, or I wouldn't think that would be a smart.
I'm not.
we may want to go more than a year to year. We wouldn't want to be wondering each year if we're going to have a facility to store snowplows and things like that. We want some longevity to the next contract as well.
What portion of that building does Crow Wing occupy versus the city?
John?
I have it, there's very specific areas. There's parking stalls, there's office spaces, and then there's shared areas like wash bays and mechanics garage. That's kind of shared between the two. I would say that we're in that 35-40% range of utilization.
A lot of shared. And the two staffs work great together to kind of figure that out. There's no line in the sand where you can't go across or anything like that, but.
Good.
All right. Thank you, Jim.
The next one is a kitchen oven for the jail. That is a 16-year-old oven. Life expectancy in our environment is about 10 to 12 years. Once again, our maintenance tracking software has the asset in there and the history. I went in and looked at that history, and we've replaced several major components on that in the last 3 to 4 years, and it's it's just used up. We've been limping it along, but it's about done.
Questions on that item? Nope.
Going on to the shooting range siding and soffit repair, we put a new roof on the shooting range this summer, and we found in the attic that the partitions on the exterior walls that keep the insulation out of the soffits has failed, and that has allowed insulation to migrate into the soffits, which is not letting the roof breathe properly. So we would like to remove that soffit, replace those partitions, and keep that insulation out of soffits. There is a chance, if we are careful, that we may be able to reuse some of that soffit material, but we're not sure exactly how that process is going to work. The other problem out there is the bottom, I would say 12 to 16 inches of the siding has some damage and holes in it, which that siding needs to be pulled off and replaced to keep water penetration out.
Those aren't bullet holes, are they?
I hope not, because it's exactly the opposite way of the rain. So,
What's the age of that building, John?
pardon me?
What's the age of that building?
That, Sheriff, do you know when that was built?
I can figure it out for you, Steve. It was shortly after the tornado that went through that area, because up until there, we only had was a trailer house. And then it was built by SDS, just on slab. No real grading, leveling, thought of water introduction on the floor, et cetera, et cetera. But I think we built the building for pennies on the dollar. The most recent addition we did was the addition of the bathrooms in the water area, the heated area throughout the year. That was, what were we, John, 6 years ago?
About 6 years,
About
yes.
6 years ago. But the actual age of the building,
2001 is when the tornado came
okay, so
through.
right around there, yeah. So I would say 2002 through 2003-ish probably, by the time we started using it. Initially, it was just an open garage, and we sat with it in a shell, I would say, for the first few years. The siding was put on right away, I would say, as far as I'm aware, I believe that's an original siding that we got.
Okay, so it's 20 years old and it's an older building. So I think that's probably a repair that's needed at this point, and I personally don't have an issue with that. I think my biggest issue is where this firing range is located and what the needs are that are going forward that are going to be required of the sort of training that takes place for the Sheriff's Department and other agencies that collaborate with us on the use of that particular site. I would like to see us as a board to look forward 5 years, 6 years out to look at, is there a better or another location? I shouldn't say better, but I think that we have an opportunity in our area to be more of a regional partner for all the other agencies around us, and I would like to see us have a proposal, look at something that addresses that kind of approach to our gun range. That's what I would see. There's training needs, there's meeting room needs, there's the cleanup, with the lead that comes from the bullets that you guys use. Somebody said to me, and we'd talked about Chief Deputy Gallus and I had talked about the lead that's currently in the berm that's out there. Well, we would just transfer that to the berm in the new place and reuse it rather than worrying about taking it out of there and mitigating it. But I would like to see that that's how we look at going forward with a shooting range for the Sheriff's Department. I think there's opportunities there for perhaps some revenue generation or at least great relationships with other agencies, and I'm talking about maybe a 50-mile radius around Crow Wing. So you're standing at the microphone if you'd like to speak to that.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with you. If we go back in time, Doug, it's been 2-3 years that there's been talk, and there was some funding out there from the DNR for a regional shooting facility. Trap shooting with our youth has just expounded. Unbelievable. It is the fastest growing sport in high school in the world, truly in the world. And that was basically derived right here in Minnesota. And if we could see a regional complex that we could use for training, that could be used by our youth for training, that could be used by our firearms instructors, you know, for young kids can get their certificate so they can go deer hunting, I would be in all of favor of that. You know, there's obviously going to be some big hurdles there, and I think we've seen that over in the Crosby area, is not in my backyard, and that's going to be the hardest thing, is finding that spot where it's not in my backyard and we can establish an area. At one point, I was on Lakeshore Conservation Club board over in Lakeshore, and we looked at property bordering the southern end of Baxter as a possibly an area of a complex. Now, that's an area now that Baxter has shown interest in. I think they actually purchased that area that at one point was in discussion. So I would be all in favor of it. The only issue I see is the farther we get from home, and we see that even with storage, you know, our boat storage out at County Highway. You know, it's a 15-minute drive, 20-minute drive, depending on traffic, to get out there from here, you know, to get out there and to get stuff moving. So the only thing that would be hard would be the distance from home, but I would be all in favor of trying to find some complex that we could build that would not only suit the training needs of us, the training needs of I would say, this hub of Minnesota, but also something that the public could use would be, I think, the ultimate process that we could have, yes.
Well, I think there's opportunities there.
Yep, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
I think that it would behoove us to start to look at what would a proposal look like. And
I think there's some
potentially
funding
where-
out there that we could take advantage of. We need to locate that site, and I think the biggest hurdle we're gonna have is, I wish there was some property by my house that it could go in at, because I'd have no problem going, but there's a lot of people that simply don't want that in their backyard, and some you can't blame. I'm used to it, so I'm the one making noise usually at my house, so.
Well, I would only say this, and this is just a thought that was in my head, and I'll say this quickly because we probably need to move on, but, you know, I think of these industrial parks, and I think of Brainerd's down here, and so basically you're just going across the highway, and is there an opportunity with some of their acreage, because industrial parks aren't selling in our area? I mean, there was a great thought, but the properties aren't selling.
Right.
So is there a footprint there large enough and appropriate enough, because there isn't a lot of residents around there, and currently you're in that neighborhood already? Just a thought.
Yep.
And so I think we can move on, but I
We
think
would love to partner with whomever to move those discussions along and go into even just that pre-stage planning to see what we could come up with, yes.
Okay, that's my challenge to everyone, that we should be looking at that. All right?
Just a quick question on this 7,500. So the issue is just airflow. So could you not tackle that problem from up above and just slide some air chutes in, or that's just standard
We
stick
tried,
frame?
we can't get to it. It's only a 412 pitch roof, and it's a small building. We physically are having trouble getting in there, so we need to slide that hopefully we can just slide that soffit out and do all the work from outside on the ladder, and then slide the soffit back into the F channel, and away we go. But we're concerned that it's going to get damaged when we do that. The siding part of it just needs to be replaced.
It's aluminum soffit?
It's aluminum soffit and vinyl siding.
And this was back in the day of who's the cheapest dollar and how can we get by with free labor. It was SDS crew, and not that they didn't do a good job, but their focus is they're not out to make a name for themselves as a builder or as a contractor, so.
That was quite delicate.
Well, you know, you can't blame them. I mean, and a lot of them are, you know, construction workers, block layers, stuff like that, so it was awesome to use that resource. But you gotta be careful, you know, they gotta have close supervision, and you have to have someone that, you know, almost a general contractor there that knows what's going on to make what you want to come out of it. And I wouldn't say it's a true square building, I'll just say that, yeah.
all right. Any other concerns? So we'll move forward with that.
Okay.
We have 2 additional facilities projects that were in the original plan. One of those is the community services remodel. That has been removed. That is no longer in our plan. The other one is the courtroom build-out. The comment that was made on that is if we could utilize ARPA funds to pay for that. Right now, we do believe that it will fit into category 1.4 in our reporting system, which is prevention within the congregate setting, as it is attached to the jail, and it becomes a congregate facility with jail staff moving in and out. We believe it will fit under that category. So at this point, it appears that we can afford that through ARPA funds.
If we were to determine that ARP funds could not be used for this purpose, we would bring that back to you for your consideration before we would start to do a project.
Perfect.
Okay, currently it's in our numbers, though, that we have on this sheet.
Yep.
And
Yes.
so that would be pulled out of there if it qualifies, correct?
If it qualifies, we'd leave it in and go do it.
Oh.
If it does not qualify for ARPA funds, we'd come back and have a discussion with you about, do you still want to move it forward with the use of CIP funds? There is adequate budget to move it forward, whether we use ARPA funds or not. ARPA funds just allows us to transfer those funds around and ends up being fund balance growth for us.
Okay. Doug, you had a question?
Well, I did, but then you said we would leave it in if it qualifies. Why would we leave that money in the capital?
In the CIP. In other words, it's an expense item. And so the expense item would still move forward. The ARPA stuff really is just the revenue. So the CIP list is the expense list. So we would move it forward.
But that is all captured in our levy
Right.
increase. So if we had an opportunity to take that out, why wouldn't we do that?
Historically,
I think
for
I
these.
think we're just doing this. We would fund it with ARPA if we can.
Yeah, so if we can, that should drop our capital improvement project.
It'll drop the revenue needs from the CIP, yes. This list is an expense list, it's not a revenue list. So what you're talking about is, do we fund it with the CIP or do we fund it with ARPA? We don't take it off the CIP, we still move the project forward. It's the expense list. You have to account for it.
It would give you
don't
the
take it
opportunity.
off book. You have to have it on book.
I don't think that you're answering the commissioner's questions, because I think at least what I perceive, and I have the same question, what Doug is saying, is if you use that, what is it, ARPA money? He's talking about the levy.
Yes, can you reduce the levy?
Yes.
Yes,
You
you
never
could.
said that. Oh.
I don't think it's advisable, but you could.
If you leave it in there.
'Cause it's the
then you build
revenue.
a fund balance.
But you don't take it off the CIP list. That's all I'm saying, is you got to book it. You got to
Or we
book the expense.
create another list of projects with the ARPA money.
You'd go through the CIP list,
I-
and you'd say, this one's going to get funded with ARPA. This one's going to get funded with
So
CIP.
can I-
This one's going to get funded by the ARPA.
So
That's what you
let me say this, okay, so ARPA, what's the letter?
American Rescue Plan.
American Rescue, okay, so if we're gonna use that, if we can use that money for the courtroom, then the money that would be levy dollars, we would leave that to build
Fund balance.
fund balance.
Or you can reduce the
Or
levy
you
with
could
it.
reduce the levy, one or the other.
Or a
He's saying-
combination of.
Yeah, or a combination of.
When I look at what we're hearing about those future facility needs, I'm not sure I think that's the right place to do it. I think we probably should have a conversation about health insurance, because we also have good news there. Makes more sense to me to do it there than on the CIP. Because we are below our fund balance target on the CIP, and so we need to build fund balance. And I think the expense budget is going to have some large ticket items in it in the future. So I think there is some potential. You could, whatever you cut out of the CIP, you could reduce the levy. Whatever you fund with ARPA, you could reduce the levy. But if you don't have ARPA funds in the following year, and you still have the same volume of projects, then you need to increase that levy next year. I don't think it's a good idea to put yourself in that position.
For the 2022 budget, we have already reduced the levy request for CIP fund by $200,000, as we had some outside funding sources we thought we could potentially use for a plow truck or other sources. So we did reduce it by $200,000 already. Reducing it this additional amount, just as Tim said, kind of sets us up that we have to increase that going forward, knowing that we have a $500,000 building or roof remodels coming up multiple years. Trying to build that fund balance now and keep that levy stable, I think, is more beneficial to us. And that's kind of traditionally how we've handled the CIP fund is we kind of set that levy and leave it stagnant. We do see increased revenues from the state in our CPA funding for the county program aid that allows us to see additional revenues year over year. This staying steady just allows us to continue having a long-term plan. The ups and downs of that levy kind of make it more difficult to have that good plan and set us up that you might have to have a 6-7% levy just to be able to do the roof project one year because we cut it 3 years prior.
So we could pay as we go if we build that fund balance up.
And that's the method we've been going for, is pay as you go.
So why, then, we've talked about anywhere from 3 to 6 million for broadband out of the ARPA funds. Why isn't that on this list?
That is an actual grant. So it's not us doing the project, we'd be granting the funding to another entity to do that, which involves a subrecipient grant and a whole bunch of other processes that we have to go through. It's not our capital investment. These in here are
It
our
will
own
still get
capital
booked.
investments.
It will still get booked. It just won't be booked in the CIP.
Right.
So there is a revenue there and there is an expense there. We don't put it in the CIP because it's not our capital asset. This list is our capital assets.
And I don't want us to lose sight of building that fund balance. That was, 2 years ago, we were in a serious situation, and I don't want to see the county in that financial position again. We have a plan to build that up. I think that's the number one priority, is to get that up where it belongs so that we don't have those scary years in the future where we have to borrow money to pay our employees. I think that's...
Never had to do that.
You're correct, and we never want to be in that position, so, and
Maybe
then
we can
doing creative accounting is not my idea of being responsible, so.
Because you're talking about the potential for levy reduction, why don't you talk about health insurance now?
Okay, jumping ahead, and we'll come back to CIP here in a
Well,
second.
if I can, just before you jump into that, I'd like to recognize John for a project that he's been working on, but I had the opportunity to meet with him and get educated in regards to some of the CIP projects. And he puts together, we're going to learn more about it when you get the 5-year plan down, but risk versus relevance. And I think that's something as we go forward that would really help us with our CIP, is that in his projects that he's looking at, rates those. And if we could see that, so if it's low risk, low relevance, we probably wouldn't be funding something like that at this time. It helps us prioritize that CIP list. And I saw that very helpful, and I just wanted to thank you, John. I think you're onto something with that.
Thank you.
And if we can follow through, and if everybody eventually on what hits the CIP list could do that, it'd be very beneficial to, I think, the commissioners. Thanks.
That is the direction that we're pushing IT, facilities. We're kind of there on fleet, and it is, what's that 5-year look? We have to plan into the future, and we have to you have a better understanding what that plan is. And then if indeed you say, well, I don't want you to go there, okay, then make the course correction. And it's about trying to create that shared vision of the future, that you understand where we're going. We're in agreement about where we're going. If we know where we're going, we get there very fast. We spend a lot of time trying to figure out where we're going.
Right. Yeah, thank you, John.
Health insurance.
All right, jumping ahead to operational budget side. Over the years, we have always, in our preliminary budget, put a 10% inflator on our health insurance. Our average has been 10%. We have had a couple of good years, and we've had some very bad years where the initial pass was 27%. We moved down to 19%. So we've traditionally put in a 10% inflator. We got good news this year on health insurance. It is effectively a 0 increase for us. This means that there's an expense change within our 22 budget of $896,000 and a little bit of change. So our expenses have reduced $896,000. That gives us capacity to build some fund balance and utilize that to address future increases in health insurance. We do know our caps in the future years now. We know in 2023, the max increase we can face with health insurance is 6%. The following year is 8%, and then 9%. Banking this funding now will help us to kind of mitigate the impact that's going to have on our levy request in the future years. So our recommendation for finance is to set that money aside to address future needs in health insurance. But we're open to your thoughts on that.
You can use it for fund balance growth, or you can use it for levy reduction. I wouldn't, even if you decide that you want to go levy reduction, we know that next year's increase is 6%. If you're going to reduce it only to next year's level, because then there's no ask for health insurance next year. And it makes that budget easier to do. If we go all the way down, the full amount, then you got to go back up 6% next year, and it becomes a budget pressure. And we can avoid that budget pressure. So that's, if you want to come down, I would suggest that's where you have some wiggle room and hit next year's target if you do. That's what I would suggest.
Commissioner Coring.
What, I should know the answer to this question. So what is our 1.4 or 1%?
About 350,000.
No, that's what it used to be.
Yeah, it's just over 400,000 right now per percent.
400,000 per.
For one.
So in all reality, we could reduce the levy by 2% in almost.
If you took the full amount, yes, and then
Yeah.
you will have to restore half of that amount next year.
Yeah, I don't favor,
But I think you could take a portion of it if you want. What it means is we build less fund balance. So that's the trade-off.
I'd be in favor of leaving it all in place, because I just think I got a feeling we're in for some rough times ahead, the way inflation is going in gas and food and everything is going up. So I would be in favor of not having a kind of a knee-jerk reaction where we set that aside so we're kind of prepared for next year. So, does that make sense?
It does, but didn't we put a plan in place to rebuild fund balances? And that was through how many years? Why do I want to think 5?
Originally, we were talking about 12 years, and it depends on how rapidly we can build fund balance. And so what I would tell you is, finance staff, administration, we're trying to find every opportunity we can to build fund
thought it was
balance so
5
that it
too.
doesn't have to be 12 years. We're trying to shrink it so that we hit our target. Where do you think that target needs to be?
Right now, the last look that we had at this, it was about 6 years for both community services and general fund to get to the minimum fund balance. That has adjusted a little bit for general fund because of the CARES Act dollars coming in that boosted our fund balance position. So that's only a few years out now. The challenge is when we project this out, we're utilizing just today's numbers. If we look at inflation, everything else, a 6-year turns into an 8 to 10-year cycle for us to be able to get that fund balance to the minimum. All this will do is either help us get there faster without changing your levy request, or it allows us to modify future years to keep that levy increase in that 3 to 4% range. Looking at our average expense growth, right now 2023 plays out at about a 5% levy increase, 24 is about a 9, and 25 is about a 9. So if you reduce that amount this year and move us down to, it's about 1.82% if you took the full amount of that. What it does for 23 is it takes you from a 5% to about a 7% levy, just based on averages. Obviously, there's a lot of things that can adapt and we modify to get us to our 3 to 4, but averages show that we should be at about a 5 and then a 9 and a 9. So banking it now helps us mitigate the effect that we're going to have long-term on the levy.
Yeah. Nick, if we could, I mean, we're talking the percents. Could you put together where we're at today in dollars and then do a spreadsheet to say where we want to, how you see growing this? Mm-hmm. So we can kind of see that and rather not be just looking at, we're talking percentages, but we don't even know where we're at today, and what's our goal to where we want to get? Because I think Paul's right in regards to, we don't know what the future is going to bring. Mm-hmm. And so, but if I could see it in hard numbers, that would help me out.
And that's part of our challenge. We have been working to rebuild the long-term financial plan. Jason did have that in place. We had some struggles with the systems that he had in place, and it wasn't tying out. It was actually artificially inflating things. So we've been working to rebuild that. The challenge comes when we face the economy adapting so much with inflation, the number we did today changes by next week, especially with the way inflation is hitting us today.
And inflation's at what, 5.4 something going on?
I think Bremer,
Yeah.
Bremer had it somewhere between 5 and 7% right now for the CPI.
Well, I already talked to Nick before the meeting, so he knows where I stand, but I think it's a good idea to leave this because we don't know what's going to happen. And we don't want to cut our throats to do something that seems the right thing, but will hurt us in the long run.
Yeah. Okay.
You got a choice, you have options, you know.
Well, I've made my choice clear, but I think Rosemary and I are on the same page, and
I don't want you feeling like we're painting you into that corner. That is the strategy, that is what we think is the wisest move, but you do have options, and so I just want you to know, you have options.
In the plan to rebuild fund balance, we didn't factor in inflation or anything, is that what I'm hearing?
It runs off of our averages. So if the inflation rate increases substantially from what our average growth has been, then it extends that out. And we're seeing that right now where the inflation rate is outpacing what our actual growth rate has been.
Even with the amount of CARES dollars that went towards fund balances, what did that do to the plan?
That
It had to reduce it by...
In the general fund, it did. Because we were able to take a little over $2 million towards the presumptive eligibility of law enforcement being dedicated to pandemic response, we were able to pull some funding into general fund. That set us up pretty well that within the next 2 to 3 years, I believe we'll be in a good position for fund balance there where we can stop that program. That was a much slower rebuild to begin with because we weren't as far away from the target. Community services, on the other hand, did not get that benefit because we couldn't take anything directly there without negatively impacting our federal funding. So they didn't have that presumptive eligibility. We didn't have the ability to build fund balance for them. They've had a good year, and another year. This year it's panning out to be another good year that we should see a little bit more fund balance growth than what we planned, but it's still a 6 to 8 to 10 year plan for theirs. Depending on how inflation impacts us, depending on how out-of-home placement changes, if we continue at the pace we're at, within 5 to 6 years, I think we'll be there. But we've seen over the history that fluctuates so substantially that we'll have fund balance bill of $500,000 one year and a $2 million fund balance usage the next.
So we're a couple years into that plan, aren't we?
We are, and that plan, when we first started, was closer to the 12-year.
When we started, it was close to that 12-year, and then that was not with inflation, so it was longer than 12. But, you know, you build fund balance right now 3 ways. We budget for it, and we do. We budget $1 million each year for fund balance growth because that was our primary strategy for getting out of this. 2, operating performance. If we can outperform our budget, we build fund balance. And we have historically done relatively well at that. But the margins on that are getting tighter and tighter and tighter. We build less fund balance each year from operations than we used to because our budgets have gotten tighter. The 3rd way is opportunistic. We'll look for an opportunity, like CARES provided one. ARPA will provide one to accelerate the plan through whatever opportunities we can. Health insurance. Whenever we can find an opportunity to build fund balance, we try to do that. So that's how we get that strategy. That's the only 3 ways we get there.
And I fully support the plan and the ability to shorten that window, but I would also like to look at opportunities to pass some savings on to our taxpayers as well. So at some point, we got to come to a conversation of how much do we have. We know we got $900,000 here. If everything goes, I don't know what we're going to end up on the capital, but and then split that into fund balance and potential lowering the levy is, I guess, my only hope that we could kind of share some of that, but not give it all away so that we're caught in a position a couple of years from now too. But
And we reevaluate that plan at the end of every year. Fund balance is a one-time look at where you're at, and it's
Right.
always year-end. So at the year end, we'll be looking at that again. We'll reevaluate that whole plan to determine where are we at in that longevity. If we can utilize this to help us build, but most likely this would hit general fund and then, like we talked, maybe be reserved for offsets to health insurance in the future. You may not see that impact in community services, but right now they're anticipating more fund balance growth than what we planned for in there because they are well under budget at this point. So that will condense that time span down. So we'll look at it again at year end and bring that back before you.
And I do think too much is a bad thing, too. We had too much at one point in
Yeah.
time. We had too much. So it is too little is bad and too much is bad. What is your target? And when we hit that target, I can tell you, we will hit the brakes on building fund balance. It doesn't make good sense at a certain point. You have enough to weather the storms.
And to Paul's point, we know there's potential rough times coming, but that also rough times for our constituents. So, I just don't want to lose focus of trying to, relieve the tax burden on our constituents too. So there's got to be a happy medium someplace that we could accomplish both, is what my hope is. I'm not sure how we get there or just, but we've got a little time to figure that out, so.
Back to the CIP.
Back to the CIP. I
So
was only
next,
kidding when I said 6 hours, but I think we're starting to push that number.
I told Therese we're aiming for 4, so I'm really hopeful we're going to get there.
I was really happy about that.
Okay, Nick, go ahead.
Scott, do you want to come up and talk about the next ones here?
What are we covering next?
So next up on is asphalt for the cold storage building at Highway.
I didn't hear you, Nick, I'm sorry.
Asphalt for cold storage at Highway.
Okay, all right. And I might lean on John also on this. So we built that beautiful cold storage building out there, and I know there was some discussion points. Oh gosh, it was a couple budget meetings ago when we kind of delved into some of the topics referenced to CIP, kind of got cross-referenced into there. So we got the beautiful complex out there. The building works great, but we are seeing problems in the springtime. Being on the gravel area, we've got big heavy trucks, we got big heavy trailers on boats, et cetera, that are going in and out of there. And then also what we're seeing is on the apron area, in the wintertime, we're seeing water come into the concrete floor, which is turning it into a skating rink. So safety is, it has become an issue out there. I don't have the answer, folks, and I ain't gonna lie, of what we need to do out there. I know we need something there that is gonna give us a solid platform to work on. And what that answer would be asphalt, at what length, at what design, I don't have a strong answer. What I'm saying and working with John, what John has found is kind of that far-reaching end of what it could end up costing to basically, I would say, serve our needs far, 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 far into the future. When the building first went up there, I had concerns of exactly this problem, was going to be access, because, we were looking at, first off, are we going to have gable end access? Are we going to have, how are we going to get in there? Then we look at the water problems running off a steel roof. We look at the snow removal problems that take place, and as everyone knows, a steel roof is nice for shedding snow, but that snow goes somewhere. So we have seen, kind of the continuation of that. John, could you speak a little bit about on the amounts of what exactly you were, what your thought was for how that would encompass the amounts out there for the asphalt?
From a pure cost
Yeah, for the costing side of it.
I think that the budgetary estimate that you've been provided initially was on the high side, but as we know,
40, yep.
as we know, asphalt very closely follows oil. So that expense estimate, I think the margin of error is rapidly shrinking. But I think in today's market, I think that's a fairly close number.
So here's my question. Stay there, John.
Okay.
Is you have runoff from the roof. You have an apron that obviously is level or leans towards the building, not away from it.
Correct.
So you're going to put bituminous out there, and I understand that, and I probably agree with the idea that there's some heavy trailers going in and out of there, and the mud is a problem. But just putting bituminous there, and this is sort of the message I'm hearing, so you need to correct this, is that the bituminous will solve that problem of water going back into the building when it won't, because the apron is already there, and if we're not putting gutters on, then what we're doing is, the idea that the rationale is that we need bituminous, and that will help with that, mitigate some of that water going back into the building, that's a false premise, because it won't. So we either do bituminous to mitigate the mud issue and the heavy equipment going in there, and we do gutters to solve the water going back into the building. Otherwise, we still have ice in there and potential work comp issues there. Correct?
Correct. The optimum fix here, it would to be do both gutters and bituminous. We were hoping that the estimate that we currently have, we would come in low enough that we would have enough funding to come back and have a discussion about adding gutters to the facility.
How big is the apron that's there now? Because,
Maybe 3 or 4 feet.
Yeah, it's not.
well, then why not dig up the apron and do it right?
We
Slope it
might
away from the
decide,
building.
once we get a excavator and a bituminous contractor in here, that those aprons need to go. And we may just want to run the asphalt right up to the slab and pitch that whole asphalt back to the south.
Then we wouldn't need the gutters if we did it
And
right.
then look at what the gutters would do for us.
That was the hope, is if you did that, you could avoid the gutters.
And the problem, part of the problem that we see with the runoff gutters, I agree gutters would help tremendously. But when you're sheeting snow off the top of the roof, when the whole chunk comes down, it sits there. So is it a leveling problem? Yes, part of it's a leveling problem, which way it's going. But also when you have a copious amount there, and without the removal, we've all seen that, just one clump that you push off your car can sit in your driveway for weeks. All of a sudden it's a solid, chunk of ice. And I think that's part of our runoff too, is the fact that it is building up, ends up being higher than the floor, and it's running back in. So I don't think gutters will be a fix-all on it. It would certainly help. But we're still gonna, if we end up with heavy snowfall all coming down, the removal part of it, of getting there right away is gonna be, really instrumental in helping out with that problem too. But the flooding, I wasn't aware of until this last year, and Adam was the one that specifically pointed it out of, yes, it turns into a skating rink on the inside there.
So, to Tim Bray, do you keep that cleared with the snow from there?
We plow the snow for that facility, just like we.
But it's not a high priority, I'm assuming, is that?
I'm sorry?
It's not a high priority?
I think we plow it just as a high priority, just like our own complex for our employees, so we can get around in there.
I think, yes. Well, same time, with the gas pumps and stuff like that start getting opened up, I would say it's pretty high up on the list. But it doesn't take long to build up a dam there. It's like the front of our building. Years ago, we decided to put the heat tape in the concrete. And not that that's a solution, but that was one of the things to have that where it was going to be basically bare pavement or bare concrete the entire year round.
Well, that's my concern. When you say it builds up, then that means it's been sitting there for a period of time.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm not questioning whether maybe it just needs to be done more often or watched more closely, so when that slide comes off, that it gets moved immediately rather than
It's to the
sitting
point
there
now,
for
so
a
here's
longer
a good
period of time.
example. It's a point now, we don't have an overabundance of space anywhere. We got a beautiful building out there, but we pull a boat outside, and in this complex, where we keep our boats during the summer months, the ones that are actively being used every day, it's really nice, and we do quite often dump them by the pumps, which is easy to do because we've got the wheel on the front. We can roll them forward, roll them backward, push them around with 2 people. You go out there, that's not a reality. It's gravel. You drop that front tire, the jack stand, if you will, in there, and you ain't moving it by hand. And, just the complete picture. We've got the complex. We just need a finality of making that whole area, not just the building, but our parking lot in and around it as an area that, can be used for what we need it for, is for equipment, et cetera.
So how wide are we talking about? I don't think we've heard that discussion, you know, we have a 4-foot apron, and then, and whether we take that up or not, what do we, I'm not sure I understand the
dimensions were
complete
that were
scope
quoted?
of the
It's about a little over 20 feet wide.
20 feet wide, and then are you coming around the one
Full
end of the
length
building?
building. At this point, no, we would only go the length of the building.
Okay.
We don't see a need to go any further than that, all the way out to the parking lot. I don't think that's necessary at this point.
And 20 feet gives you enough room to move trailers in and out, and,
Where we can stack them, basically pull them out, you know, parallel them there, and whatever's gonna stay outside for that day, or, you know, just to have an area where they can be quickly set off and moved, would be more than adequate, yeah. They obviously wouldn't, they would be parallel, not bringing in at an angle. You know, our average length, with the boat on them is probably, with the motor, I would say 26 to 28 feet is what we're looking at. But paralleling them, we could double them up. You know, we're only looking at 6.5 foot wide, so that'd be no problem at all.
so Land Services doesn't have anything out there any longer, or they do, in that building?
They have rights to the, oh my gosh, my south end and part of the loft area, I believe below the loft area. So they do have some area in there, yep.
Okay.
How big is this building, and are the doors on the gabled end or the other sides?
I'll have to look at the exact dimensions to give you, but it is a very large pole barn.
Yep, it is,
Yeah.
it is a large
But are
building.
the doors on the gabled end or the other sides?
Pardon me?
Are the doors on the gabled ends or on the other
We're on
sides?
the other side, not on the gable end.
Okay.
So Gary, Mr. Griffin, what are your thoughts on what's being proposed? I know it's the sheriff's department that's proposing it, but it impacts your department also.
Yeah, we're fine for us either way. We do have I would call it the west end, probably, I think it's 40 feet of the west end. I don't think we do have any access to the mezzanine. That's basically, there's a wall in there, and we don't get any access to the sheriff's side. But for us, it's mainly all cold storage. And whether there's a little mud in there or not, it doesn't really impact our operations. Of course, I don't know how easier it could be snow plowing on asphalt versus some gravel and maybe a little less maintenance and ruddy out there. So it's one way or the other. It's I have no strong opinion one way or the other. We got what we got.
Okay, thank you. Doug?
I was just going to say, Tim, before I forget, you know, next year as we do this, I think it would be helpful if we could have a little field trip to see some of these projects, so we know we don't have to ask so many questions. But some of this we're kind of flying.
We should have taken this list from you guys and gone on a
Exactly.
field trip. Yes.
And I don't know if there's time this year or not, but some of the stuff, if you actually could see it, I think it would answer a lot of the questions that we're asking them today. So,
Well, and what are we on for time constraints? I mean, this is the end of the year, so I mean, if anyone wanted to do that individually or as a group under following a meeting or whatever, we could certainly make that work.
If you want
anytime.
to look at it, you just call John and he'll go out there with
well,
you.
and I just thought as a group it might be helpful, but either or, it's just ultimately we've got to answer to some of this. These dollars being spent, so having a visual is much easier than a piece of paper saying, well, because it was asked for. That might be helpful for next year to kind of shorten this process. The shooting range, of course, is just a few blocks away. A little jaunt down there after a meeting would be, I think, at least helpful. And some of the stuff we don't have to see, but I think.
Even a picture, if you'd take a picture and have that to be able to put up or print it for us.
I think that particular building is about 40 by 100.
That building is 60 feet wide by 192 feet long.
So we're talking, Pequot math, I don't know, what's that, 7,000 square feet?
That's a lot.
I don't know, big building.
It's big.
The airport would like to have that for hangars.
No,
We'll
there's-
give it up if Mr. Anderson will give up his hangar. Yeah, we'd be gladly change, yeah.
If you spend the 40,000 on this, you have to cure that water infiltration.
I didn't hear you, Tim.
If you spend the 40,000 on this, you have to fix that water infiltration
Yes.
problem. And don't come back another year and say, we need more money to fix the water infiltration.
Okay.
No, because that's going to be a consistent problem. When you got that thawing and freezing inside, it's going to crack also, so.
Yep.
So there's your facility.
Thank you.
So, John, can you
I
kind of
wouldn't have
point
had any
with a pointer?
questions had I been able
What
to
would
see
get
that.
asphalted?
Picture. Yeah, really hard.
You have the pointer?
Yep.
Nick has it.
The one on the top?
There.
We're talking about asphalting, so it would be basically from this corner here, all the way down to here. This drive can be maintained with Class 5. I don't see that being a problem at all. It's these doors and this area right in here.
And there's enough room there for sloping.
Oh, there's plenty of room.
There's enough room for
We can
sloping.
grade that any way we want, Tim.
Good.
You bet.
Okay.
If you guys decide you want to fund it, that was I think, a minimum requirement.
Yeah, for sure.
Other concerns? So what we're looking at, to be clear, is a combination, are we, of gutters and bituminous? Blacktop? I know when I go on a bike ride, I always say bituminous, and they say, what are you talking about? Well, blacktop.
Those are the purple flowers, petunias.
That is the expectation, yes. But once again, with the oil market so closely tied to the asphalt market, we're going to have to wait and see when we get into spring what that's going to price out like. But we're when we originally looked at this, I think we were hoping that there would be funding for both.
So when you were originally looking at this, to Commissioner Franzine's point and what Tim is saying, is were you looking at sloping and mitigate, whether you take that apron out and just go right up to the slab? Is that just adding additional potential costs on this project? So regardless of the price, you're saying we might come under the 40,000, but when we start looking at really addressing the problem, are we maybe more at 40,000, maybe a little more? Where are we at?
I did not participate in the original quote process. That was the
Okay.
previous chief deputy, I
was that-
believe,
okay, was that Dave?
that Dave submitted this project. So I do not have those bids.
Okay,
All
so,
I know is based on the square footage and what asphalt is and what oil is we're in that range.
go ahead.
That's assuming then that there's no grading or sloping of that area.
The grading could be included. That's a relatively inexpensive thing. That's even something that our highway department with one of our guys running a transit level or one of their guys, we can grade that
But we're
in-house.
assuming that base is good and.
Oh, the base is good, yes, Doug, and I think that, for the most part, the slope and the grade, it's not angled towards the building. I mean, not the whole parking lot is not angled towards the
It
building.
goes away from the building.
Yeah.
We should get a updated bid on that. So we should get an updated
Yeah, and
bid soon.
if you're going to, you obviously got to take some out of there. If you're going to put in 3 inches of asphalt or 4, whatever you're going to put, it just seems cheap for 40,000 to do all of that. And there's got to be some grading and shaping of that lot to get it ready for asphalt, but.
Oh, yeah.
And again, we don't have the actual bid, or we don't know what was included in that, but maybe so, but I just,
Well, when I did my driveway, and I think you're right on the ball, we can have a new quote come in on it, but when I did my driveway at home, I would say probably 40% of the cost was the prep work and what they brought in for Class 5, et cetera, underneath there. I'm guessing this base is gonna be sitting pretty good. It's gonna take some site work, it's gonna take, maybe a few loads coming in, but they're not gonna have to completely strip that out of there and rebuild that base there, which could be some significant savings there. So I think the easiest answer for now is to do that, try to get an updated quote, and there might even be dividers that are gonna have to go up on the roof there, for pushing it one way or the other, because not just gutters, they also have the separators or whatever they do on the roof, lines for snow, et cetera, to mediate how fast it and how much comes down, so. So we can certainly make that happen. That'll be on our to-do list as of today. We'll get a hold of AB and have them run out there and see if they can give us an update on it.
think that would be good. I think we'd all like to see updated numbers to solve the problem, both in terms of the mud and, the thaw in the spring, but also the ice buildup, the water running inside the building. We don't want to see that. That'll shorten the life of that floor in there.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, the freezing and thawing on that floor will end up, we're basically taking that top coat right off of it, yeah.
Right. Okay, you'll get us some new numbers?
Absolutely.
All right. That work for everyone? Okay.
Next on the list is the rifle range improvements. Rifle range.
Rifle range, what did we have left on there? We had the sewer.
We didn't talk about the sewer, and you wanted to put in a drain field, if I understand correctly, because now you're going out there and pumping.
Yes, and it was, so when we designed this, really to give you a quick history lesson on when this really started was OSHA has, just like anybody else, been updating their mandates throughout the years. And part of the process now is our lead mitigation plan for us shooting down there. For your hands, basically having a facility for, hand wash, cleanup, et cetera. We actually go through annual training on OSHA through what we have to take as law enforcement for our post license. And this is one of the documents that really started hitting a few years back and actually was implemental in getting us the addition that we added on there, where we put in the well, we put in the running water, and we heat at least that section of the building where the bathrooms and the sink are. The tank system was first derived because we do not use that much water down there, and the tank system was not a problem until the issue came up of wintertime and freezing, because we are down there limited use during the winter. It's just the nature of the beast. We have seen it freeze up. I don't know, and this is not something this is something that was on our far-reaching improvement plan. But when we're talking, Steve, about what we want to see for a complex in the future, could we get by maybe with some blankets down there and a heating system? It's really making me think. I mean, just today, since the discussions that we started with, I'm not in favor of throwing a whole lot of money into a sewer system if it's something that we truly can envision us only being there for, for a few more years. Maybe the way to go would be a, blanket system over the tank, because it truly is just a tank that's in the ground, a holding tank that we have pumped out. So I don't want to say withdrawing that right now, but I guess it's something that I would say is not a high priority on my list as of just in the last hour of discussions that we've had here.
Very good. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Is there not city utilities that run right by there to go out to the industrial park area?
Yes, there are, and they're not hooked up.
Yes, well, and then they're on the
Would they be?
north end, I believe. They hit the north end.
And it has been a topic at the Fair Board for years and years, and it is the cost of their water. Are they hooked up? Or they're talking about it? I know there's some history.
They're hooked up, but they also added another well out by the animal barns.
Because I know the complaint they were under for a long time was they had to pay too much for their water.
Right.
Similar to the airport. It's the same thing. They're paying that
Because they're not
higher
in the
price
city,
because they're not in the city
getting
limits.
city water.
And that's what we're
Yeah.
paying, we would be paying out there if we hooked
Oh,
up.
so where is that? That's got to be at their main office building, I would guess. Where is the water and sewer?
I was thinking that it ended on the north end where that development road goes back in there, on the north end of I think it's very close to there. I don't know I don't have an answer if the fairgrounds, if they are actually tied to city water and sewer. They very well could be. I guess I just knew that when we looked at it, it was one of those, we didn't even really check far into it because it was kind of like, man alive, that would cost a lot of money.
It's a city block. It's very expensive.
Yeah.
I think their restrooms are hooked up to city water and sewer.
Okay.
That restroom building, the large one they have there, I think that's hooked up. But that's all. Everything else is a well system, and BPU is not willing to accommodate.
They don't want to be annexed into the city, and I'm not sure entirely why, since they're a nonprofit. There's no taxation issue. I don't know why, but they don't. But they are currently paying twice the rate for water
Correct.
and sewer because they're not in the city limits.
Right.
So it's on the site, but where the shooting range is, is kind of segregated from the rest of the fairgrounds, and getting from where it is to there, that's, I'd go out on a limb and say your drain field's gonna be cheaper than that.
Yep. But to your point, I would like to just forego this at this point, and let's look at what the future.
I'm completely comfortable with that, yeah.
And if you can put blankets out there that'll help that situation as kind of a Band-Aid fix or a temporary fix, let's do that.
So 52,000 was just for septic?
I don't have the line in front of me, Nick.
It was to put in some culverts and some paving areas to address some water runoff issues, to put in the drain field for the septic, and then add some additional audio-visual systems in the classroom for training purposes.
What was that last part?
Audio-visual for training purposes in the classroom out there.
Folks, I'm not interested in throwing a whole lot of money in there if we're gonna be looking at a new idea in a few years. We will get by with what we got on that. It's kind of cool. I'm very excited about seeing where we can go with this in the future, so yeah.
Thoughts?
Take it off,
Pardon me?
take it off.
Let's kind of slide it off to the side
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
Very
That's what I
good.
heard too.
Move on to the next one. Oop,
And then if we go back to the original on the saw, is it worth investing the 7,000 into? I don't know.
Yes, good point, Doug, and I actually thought about that too. The only thing that scares me, and I told John about this the other day, that what does scare me with that building is we had standing water inside on the concrete floor for years. And the runoff in the building is terrible. So my concern now is, do we have a lot of mold, et cetera, in there? And I think that question we get answered, if they're gonna replace the siding and, et cetera. If we're in there 5, 6 years, the building, the exterior, in my mind, is gonna start looking like something we would not want to represent Crow Wing County. My thought is, if it's, because we do heat it, and it's kind of one of these marginal, if we're out there, we'll crank the furnace up and get it up to 65 degrees. Otherwise, it's right at 50 degrees in the one end. So there's, some pretty drastic temperature changes that we push it through. Some weeks we're down there 2-3 days, we'll be running and heated for us to be in there, and then it might sit idle for a week or week and a half. I think it's at least worth investing in seeing what needs to be done to make sure that could be a complex that could be used for the next 5 years. But I'm not in, like the sewer and stuff, I'm not in favor of throwing money in that if that's something that literally we can hobble by on, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good. I just, again,
Okay.
I agree 100%. If we're going to maybe research a new location, I think there was damn near $100,000 of set aside for the shooting range, if I remember right. Why not throw a couple turbines on the roof and address the ventilation for now until we determine what the location's going to be long-term?
Yeah.
And I would love to see that, again, a multi-use shooting range that could be used by other agencies, other groups, the public for that matter. It's just finding that spot, which is going to be the...
Finding that spot, and we will have to go on a field trip up to Bemidji, because Bemidji did that. They spent about $1.7 million on the shooting complex they have up in Bemidji. State-of-the-art, beautiful facility. So as this progresses along, we will certainly have to take a field trip up there for who's interested in seeing what they did for really the whole community. It's for the high school, for the trap range, for people that want to shoot rifle, pistol. They got a clubhouse there. It's really all encompassing. Beautiful, beautiful range. So.
And it's going to bring in revenue, I would assume. It's not...
it's ranges. I was on the Lakeshore board for years. We were a nonprofit. That one is also ran by a nonprofit that stepped in and took over the management of it. You're not going to get rich doing it. And the problem is, just like anything else, the fluctuation in costs have been astronomical. Last year, you could buy a case of ammunition anywhere for $50. This year, you can't find any, and when you do, it's double the price. It's $100 a case. So it's getting to be, more expensive endeavor, even for the high school students. We used to do it for $50 a case. This year, directly from federal, we were at least able to get ammunition. It was $75 a case. So, we're seeing the increases there. So basically what it costs is every time a kid comes and shoots 2 rounds during competition for high school league, it's about $32 for them to come up and shoot 2 rounds of trap. So the costs have went up, so.
I think the one thing we have to remember too, there's revenues generated by the community when people come into our area to use the facility. And so I want to save Tim's lost dollars. I want to put dollars in the cash registers of our local restaurants and other stores when they come in, and if we're really talking about a regional facility, they have to come from Wadena and from Aiken and McGregor to come in here. So they'll eat a meal here. Well, they might buy gas here. There's all kinds of things that generate revenues for us that are on the, that we don't recognize when we build a facility like that. So,
Yep, absolutely. Did you look at the bike trails? I remember when they first thought about them, I thought, are you kidding me? This isn't going to be a hit. Oh my gosh, was I wrong on that one?
we're the silent majority out there.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we'll move that one off to the side.
Yes, I'm completely comfortable with that. Yep.
And we'll maintain the building as much as we can to get through until we get a better plan in place and perhaps a building and get to that point. So, all right?
All right.
Next, Nick?
EOC video wall.
EOC video wall, yes. So Nick was nice enough to forward off these, so I did get some of the comments that were coming back, and then Nick and I also had conversations. I just want to try to explain it to you guys so you can get a little bit better picture. I believe all of our commissioners have been down in our dispatch center, and we've got the video wall there. So that's what we're talking about, is a system that can be used individually or all together to project whatever we want to put on the screen. So if you've also all been in our EOC, our training room, our EOC down there. And what we've seen in this last year with the pandemic, with the pipeline, really the protests, really everything that, I hate to say it, but it seems like it's going to be part of us moving forward. Even the pipeline discussions, protests, et cetera, are going to continue. Even though the pipeline is in the ground and it's running, we know that process is going to continue. So with the video wall, what it allows us to do is basically it's an addition to dispatch. We've already ran the cables for it, so it's simply installing those video monitors across it'd be the north wall. So it'd be when you're seated in there and looking forward to the north wall, it would be the video wall that's all the way across there. How we would use that is on every avenue. BCA has come up, and I've been pushing for it for years, and we finally made it happen. I think we all have been pushing for it for years. The only training spots, and BCA runs annual trainings throughout the year on a great vast majority of programs. The only training spots that you could go to were down in the cities or up in Hermantown/Duluth. And we were lucky enough to get Pam, the training coordinator, here on site and host a training here. And her comments when she left our facility were, I think we found our new offsite training facility. It's that technology that she saw, that technology that we know we need to continue that program. And the nice thing with this is when we go live, if we're a live EOC or even a live training, is right now we have the ability to basically bring in one entity on that screen. We can split it, but we can't have more than one entity on that screen. With this video wall, and if you remember, go back in time when you were in dispatch, you notice that we have the ability to throw a different entity or a different person, say in a live meeting, or say it would be Red Cross and the hospital and Cass County and Crow Wing County and State Patrol and whatever the scenario or the issue that we're dealing with. So it gives us that ability to do exactly that. The cost is significant, but we did build, and we already ate part of the cost with making sure that we ran all the wiring, all the hardware, et cetera. So this is basically just the software, the technology to make that system work there. Is it going to be useful? Absolutely. I mean, this last year has taught us a lot of how to run a command, of what it takes to run a command and really all the processes that we have to follow through on that. We've learned a lot from the pandemic, and we've learned a lot from the pipeline.
So I'll speak real quickly. When I spoke with the chief deputy, he brought that vision of what you're looking at to me, because when I originally saw this on this list, what I saw was a drive-in theater approach. One big screen.
No.
So we could all look like we're real life, you know?
Yeah, so if the Vikings ever go to the Super Bowl, we can watch it, yeah.
We'd all be invited down there, but so that's part of describing what we need to know. And when I spoke with the chief deputy, he explained just what you just did, that it would be multiple screens, and I don't know how many you're talking, maybe you could clarify that too.
I don't have the numbers, but I'm guessing one of the combinations I saw up there would be 6. Basically, we've got 2 monitors down there, and it would be a continuation basically from the left corner to the right corner, that entire wall. Yep.
And when we talk about our area being centrally located in sort of the northern Minnesota area, in my discussions with the chief deputy, it only makes sense that we would be that sort of war room, I call it. You said a command center.
Yeah.
Where, we don't have to be sitting in Thief River Falls. We can be sitting in Brainerd doing the operation, and, the people on the ground are providing all the video back and with whatever means, the drones and whatever. So he really clarified that for me. So prior to that, I didn't know that, and I would have said, nah, I don't think so. But now I see a whole different need, and again, we're bringing other agencies into our community, and that's a benefit to our community. And I think we should embrace that when we can. Other comments?
So say the BCA would hold the annual, conference or something there. Does that generate any revenue, or is it kind of a mutual aid type agreement?
No, good question. It does generate a revenue, not for us, because when we host trainings, we training for law enforcement. When we host trainings, we end up getting free spots. So yeah, it's kind of a give and a take. But the revenue that's going to be coming in is these oftentimes are multiple day trainings. If you go into the management series, because I have management series, supervisory experience, trainings that take place, some of them are multi-day, 3 to 5 days. So you're going to see that money coming into our local hotels, for them staying here on site. Really, they're across the state. I used to travel when I went through the management series courses for the BCA. It was either down to the cities for a week at a time, or it was up to Duluth, Hermantown for a week at a time. So, some pretty significant costs there. You got hotels every night, you got meals every day, et cetera. So there's going to be a return on the investment there. And the most recent example that I can give you of when we actually went live as a command center was during the fires. St. Louis County was the hub for the pipeline. And then lo and behold, everything started on fire, as we know up north. And we were one phone call away, and within 24 hours, John Bowen had our EOC up and running, the pipeline for all of Minnesota. We were the EOC. We were the direct contact within a day's notice. And it's very fulfilling to do that. To be the source and to use that room exactly how we wanted to use that. That's what we built this for. It's not just for us, but it's for our community, it's for our partners, it's for our neighbors. So I see it as a great expense. Now I'm going to share with you, and I'm going to be honest. If the Vikings ever go to the Super Bowl, I'm going to watch it down there. I am. So I'm going to throw that one caveat out there. But
benefit is it's never going to happen. So.
I know. So.
Scott, if I'm talking the same room where we had that meeting for the bicycle trail safety issues, there were like 4 big monitors on the sides. Do they stay then too?
Yeah, so they're basically those monitors, yes. So what we'll do is we will keep the bank ones that are back farther into the room. The front ones will end up being incorporated into part of that consistent video wall. And it's seamless. I mean, like in dispatch, you can see the lines there, but in dispatch, we can make that into one screen if we wanted to, or we can make it, into, the benefit of it is not one screen. The benefit is exactly that, is when we have multiple agencies, multiple resources, or even classroom folks that are sitting in the classroom, and then we can do remote through the BCA for those that can't show up. We throw them up on the screen. And then each person, we can have that conversation by each person, not just a group event like this with one speaker, being able to talk. So it's a very, very cool system.
So a portion of this is actual software, is that?
Yep, basically what we're looking at is the monitors and the software that runs it is what the cost is, yep.
Okay. That's all I got.
Okay, Rosemary, anything? No? All right, let's move on.
Jail body scanner.
Jail body scanner, dun, dun, dun. All right, whoever had the comment, Sheriff, I don't support this, I'm gonna change your mind right now. The jail body scanner, I want to share with you and build a picture for you, because I've heard some comments, and we kind of had this same, and Steve, I think a lot of it has exactly what you said, is, we throw something on there with not a lot of descriptors, and I want to make sure that you guys are getting the correct picture. So one of the comments that I heard back from Nick was, is this intrusive? No. This is basically, we've all flown and had to go through TSA scanners. This is a 4-second system. Your feet go on the yellow lines, your hands go up, the scanner comes by and takes that picture, that image of you. So they're, along with that same thing, when those scanners are first introduced by the TSA to our airports, that same concern, that same comments came up, oh my gosh, and people are going to be looking at body parts of people. Number one, no, the technology is not for that. We're looking for objects that someone has ingested through their mouth or put up through another cavity into their body. We have a very intrusive system in our jail. People are strip searched coming into our jail. Jail is very intrusive. So I don't want it to be sold of, we're violating anyone's rights. No, this will be the third year, 2022 will be the third year of these being implemented across and allowed in and being used in our jails. The system is not just go buy it, plug it in, and off we go. We got to work with the health department. It takes up to 6 months to get the approvals and the permits that we need to own this technology, to use this technology. And really where it's going to benefit us is that contraband coming in. So take a case, and I can't speak on cases that we have in place now or that have happened in the past, but just generically, if Adam were to come into our jail as a criminal, and he had introduced drugs because he wanted to sell them, say he's coming in on a warrant, and he knows that, hey, I'm going to jail, I'm going to be in jail for 3 days, I can sell a whole lot of methamphetamine, which we just had in our jail. I can sell a whole bunch of methamphetamine by swallowing it, and then either throwing up once I come into custody, or it goes out the other end. That happens. That's what we're trying to prevent. What can happen in that scenario? The bag breaks, and we end up saving someone's life. Worst case scenario, someone could end up dying from an overdose. Now, the other end of that is Adam is stopped in a traffic stop and runs into a bathroom and is able to hide it in another orifice in his body and bring it in and introduce it into our jail. And there's a 3-cough system. I want to make this as graphic as I can for you. We do strip searches, and this is a 3-cough system. They can cough 5 times and still not produce what's in their body. This will pick that up, and this is what we're trying to prevent from getting in our building. Throughout our area, Beltrami has one, Mille Lacs has one basically ordered on hold. They're doing a remodel right now. As soon as they get up and running, they're going to have it. St. Louis County, and then you get down to the metro area. Yes, this is really becoming a tool that everyone is using. Where do I see our jail? And Andy Gallus just had this conversation with chief deputies from our District 2 yesterday. I said, share with them my big picture of where I want to see us. You mentioned a regional training facility. I want to see us have a regional jail. One of our jails only have 15 people in custody right now. And would this tool be beneficial to us? Yes. Would it be more beneficial because if we were to end up being a regional facility here 5, 6, 8 years from now, and we're housing for Itasca County, Cass County,
Aiken County, basically the tri-center area here, if you will, we'd have a lot more inmates coming in. And the only way, once this process is used, once we get this scanner and we start using it, the only way we would see an introduction of drugs or contraband or even knives. They got cases of knives coming in an orifice of a body, a fillet knife coming in. I don't know how that's possible, but it is. With that stuff coming into the jail and with this technology, the only way it could happen would be by our employees. And I have full faith and confidence in our employees and the people that we hire. So I think we could virtually eliminate contraband, drugs, and weapons in our jail.
So I can tell you real quickly, my experience at the state hospital, duct tape covers sharp edges really well.
And that could be, yeah.
So it will go in the orifices. So we've had razor blades, they swallow them and you x-ray and there it is. And once the doctor sees the duct tape, they said, well, we'll wait for it to go through the system. But, you could take a fillet knife and put enough duct tape on there. So we should take duct tape off the counters and make them get an order for it.
Well, I'll tell you what, duct tape will get picked up by this system. And so will the knife, so yeah.
Yep. So tell us a little bit about kind of the history of finding these things. And I know you don't have this technology right now, but in the past, with what was available to you, were you finding a lot of this?
Oh, yes, contraband, our jail staff are constantly looking through the cells, doing those spot checks, those cell checks throughout. Is it a daily occurrence? No. Have we had weapons introduced? Yes, every year we have weapons introduced. Do we have drugs coming in? Yes, just within the last, Heath, what was it, week and a half we had meth in there? Week? We had meth in there. Wow. And, we can't find anything. And it's a little more isolated now. When Cass was bringing more inmates in, and not picking on Cass just simply because we house for Cass, when Cass was bringing more inmates in, we do the body searches. All the property has gone through, but it was still getting introduced. And, kind of the common sense approach was, where it's coming from. Well, it's coming from the arrests that we're making, from someone that's hiding something because they don't want to get caught, or they're truly bringing it in to sell it in our facility. But with this scanner technology, we had people that, would tell us, hey, I got a stomach ache and I swallowed something. Okay, let's go to the hospital, With this, it will show us. Everyone would go through this process when they come in. And anybody that's got anything in their system, it would show up, and it would be an automatic, whatever our policy procedure would be on what we are identifying there, whether it be a weapon, drugs, or just an object that we cannot tell, following our protocols of what the next steps would be.
So, question on occupancy then. First of all, Itasca, I believe, is building a new jail. Weren't they ordered to build a new one up there?
Itasca and Carleton County are the most recent ones that were they call it sunsetted, where they're basically told you shall have a new facility.
So you talk about a regional approach, and right now our occupancy is down. DOC is not a reliable partner at this point. So you talk about regional. Have you had discussions with other counties to see if that regional approach is viable for them?
I've had, I would say, preliminary discussions with District 2 sheriffs of exactly that. Specifically, the most recent was Kelly Lake, Carleton County Sheriff, when her jail was sunsetted. They have since moved through their processes, but we're at that point when I had the conversation with her, we weren't ready to really move this idea forward. This is something fairly recently where we're seeing our numbers kind of stagnate, which is a good thing. I was surprised. I was first to admit that I thought we were going to be over 200 this time of year with the COVID restrictions and with all the numbers of thousands of backlog cases that we're seeing. But not picking on our courts, but all courts are not sentencing people or sending people to jail in the volume that they did. I remember one of the comments I heard from a sheriff when I brought this up at one of our meetings was the cost of a new facility is more than the taxpayers could ever be burdened with. Some of these smaller counties. No matter how big your jail is, it's still going to be a multi-million-dollar complex to build. Are we going to see partners, come forward? Yes. For those that are building right now, I don't have an answer for them. This is the time that I think it's appropriate for us to really delve into it and to start moving that messaging forward. Andy and I had a conversation yesterday. Dispatch, look at the staffing issues we have in dispatch across the state. Could we see a regional dispatch center? I don't know. I think a lot of it's on the table, but one area that I think we could really expand on is the footprint that we've got currently in our jail, the expansion ideas that we've already got the blueprints for, and where that's going to lead in the next 5, 10, 15 years.
So I think when I talk about occupancy and it's down right now, and I know that's a volatile thing, that could change tomorrow. It's no different than what we experience with out-of-home placement. We knock on wood all the time, hoping that it stays where it is. Maybe not in the jail, maybe we need the revenues that come with that, but it would have been interesting to know, to have had further discussions with these other counties and that to see if they are willing to move along in the regional approach.
Would have, yes, but we weren't ready at that point. I mean, really what's been the eye-opener for me is the complete change of modeling that we're seeing come forward after the pandemic. Well, we're still stuck in the pandemic, but a year ago, conversations were being had, but they weren't, this is really what we want to do. It was just kind of throwing feelers out more than anything. I think now, and what we've seen, and I think enough time has lapsed that we can, kind of see the formation of the pattern that's coming forward, and this is what it's going to lead us to.
So I represent a couple areas that drugs are pretty prevalent in those areas, and sad to say that, but I think that's one of the top things out there for crime right now that causes crime. Some of it, you might pick them up for theft and that, but it's really the drugs behind the scene that are driving some of these things. So I see a problem there, and I know that when you have a locked facility, that people are always trying to pull things in that you don't want in there. I would hope the judicial group would charge them with a felony if they're bringing drugs into a jail. I think that, I don't know, does the statute say that we'll charge them with a felony?
Yes, but just like anything else, everything's up to bargaining.
Right.
If you take a person that burglarizes 10 houses in today's world, you'll see a burglary count, not 10 counts. So kind of the same thing. If you've got a person that was arrested for drugs and the contraband comes in, it will certainly be charged out. But what will end up happening with it? It's anyone's guess. Yeah.
Yep. Understood. Questions? Doug?
Are you able to, and maybe you can't answer this, but on how often does this occur, whether it be weapons or drugs? Is it a weekly, monthly, every quarter type incident? Or, how often are you seeing it? Is that increasing? Is that?
I guess we could run. I'll see what I can get for stats for you, Doug, because I'm guessing we could run it with the the instances where contraband is. We'd have a call for service on it anytime contraband is coming in. So I can run that data to find. Now, saying that, I don't think they're going to draw a very good true picture, because that's when we're catching it. There's a lot of drugs that go through that facility that no one knows about because they're being used as soon as they come in.
And I guess I think you have visitation, of course. Do we know if it's coming in on the individual that's being booked or a visitor?
Not anymore. No, everything is virtual for visitation. The only people that are coming in that actually have a person-to-person conversation would be our volunteers, which were, because of the pandemic, are basically non-existent right now, and attorneys, et cetera. But everything else is done virtually on a virtual phone system for visitation.
If we do go back to visitation, I'm not sure if that's even an option.
No, we wouldn't. No, we're at a virtual visitation for family, friends, et cetera. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So visitors wouldn't be required to go through the scanner?
No, and visitors that come in are only in our front entryway. There's a small room there where they can use the video phones to make contact with the person. There's no actual, like you see in the movies where, come in the room and sit down together. No, none of that, no.
So everyone that comes in would be scanned?
Every inmate that comes in
Right.
would be scanned,
Okay.
yep.
Well, there's a side discussion that could go on about that too, but that's, I won't bring that one up at this point.
All right. I think you and I are on the same brainwave, yeah.
It's interesting, when I looked at the machine, that, you know, you put a link out there to it, and you have to stand in there, and all I can envision is somebody who's inebriated extremely, and you're trying to get them to stand in that thing for 4 seconds, so, and I just think, wow, that must be a job.
Well, but it is, but then take that same inebriated person, or that person that's combative, and now we've got to get all their clothes off to make sure they don't have anything hidden on them. We deal with it. It's an everyday occurrence now, yeah.
Same as the airports.
Yeah, oftentimes, yes.
Any questions, concerns? I guess you and I, Doug, are the ones that are asking the questions here, so.
Yeah, that's typically our counterparts.
And I don't know what we got left for topics, but before I'm on it, I'd like to bring up two things. First off, thank you, as being someone in charge of one of our offices, thank you for your comments reference to where we are headed with our levy. And second, my hope with our EOC being expanded is we can use that for this type of meetings, because the formal setting and having discussions, it's tough. I mean, it's just not, it's not as conducive as it could be. And maybe with the technology that we can put in, or that we're hoping to get over there, we'll be able to meet the meeting requirements, et cetera. And I know that's the biggest part of it, is meeting the meeting requirements, but this isn't conducive of having, you know, just an easy conversation. For me, I don't mind it, but I can feel the nervousness a little bit of people, because it feels more formal. It feels like a regular board meeting rather than just a meeting to have a conversation, so.
Yep.
How often is that room used, say, in a given week?
On a given week, yeah, daily. We use it every morning for our briefings because we have the live feed in there. And then meetings lined up. I'll have Haley send you guys a snapshot of the schedule. It's getting more and more used all the time. And this last year was tough. You know, we didn't have any, you know, there was often times where no one was at our morning. We do a morning brief every morning at 8:30 to figure out what's going on. And we work with community services, we work with our jails, we work with probation, really everyone, of, hey, this is the people we're dealing with, this is, you know, what we need done. For a while, those were completely virtual. Now we kind of went back to a combination of virtual and in person, but it's used daily.
Okay, back to the scanner. Are we leaving that on the CIP?
I guess at this point, I would support that.
Can you pull together some stats, do you think, that would, you know, the frequency of weapons or drugs getting in?
I can, of what we've got for calls for service, but I don't want to, it's not going to show a real representation, you know, because there's, like I said, there's a lot of drugs that are coming in that we have no knowledge of.
That you don't catch.
I could get you, I want to say probably Anoka County would be the one that's had the scanners the longest. Maybe I could try to get some data like that, of someone that went from not having the scanners to having the scanners. Maybe I could find some representation like that might draw you a little bit better picture. But we'll see what we can find. We'll see what we can come up with, yeah.
And, you know, I guess, again, it's, I think with your description today, I just don't want to throw money at something that maybe it's not a huge issue yet, but.
Oh, no, this is a huge issue.
It does sound like, and again, when we're looking at it on a piece of paper, we don't have really an idea if this is a once a year occurrence or if it's once a week occurrence. So, you know, it helps to have this conversation to kind of get a better understanding of what we're spending $200,000 on.
Yeah.
And in the long run, I'm sure that probably could save us probably a lot of money.
Oh, yeah, no, and the risk management side of it is huge on this, you know, so, and I don't want to downplay it because there are numerous cases of stuff coming into our jail, but, you know, one person that is caught with baggies in his stomach or in his rectum or her rectum, that we can find and get to medical services prior to having an overdose and a death, is a huge number. You know, the life expectancy of these, when Nick and I were talking about it, and Teeth ran the numbers, The lease is a 5-year lease on them. So that's basically the life expectancy of what we're looking of this unit. So we're looking at $40-some thousand a year of what the, well, I shouldn't say that. If you do a lease, it's a 5-year lease. So so basically, that's what we had the comparable on it for the cost. Every 5 years, you would get a new system if you were on a lease. With us buying it, are we going to get a couple more years out of it? Absolutely, we always do, just like everything else, just like John brought up about our kitchen equipment that we have there. We're using it far beyond what we have it initially itemized out for, so.
And that might be something that we'd want to know too is, and I thought about that when I was reading some of the specs on this, is it didn't talk about the life expectancy of one of these. And I know technology is changing all the time and soon quicker and quicker, but I would maybe like to have, if there's some information out there on what that life expectancy is and how effective it is. And if you go out 5 years, is it really now not as effective? Are they better at hiding this stuff than previously, or is this appropriate even at the 5-year timeline? I'm not sure.
I don't know what data, we'll see what we can find for data out there, and I am not a technological expert, but I can tell you what I've been told over and over is you go 3 to 5 years and everything after that is a dinosaur in comparables. But I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means that the next machine 5 years from now, all they'll do is walk through our holding area and the scan will go through and it's done. Who knows where we'll be.
And then there's the side, because it's a machine, there's a maintenance potential thing there too, and it didn't talk about that in the specs either. They're talking about the marketing side of it, and they always only give you the positives. But it'd be interesting to hear from Anoka County or what their experience is with that maintenance.
Well, and the other question, are we better off buying or leasing?
Nick has his philosophy on it, I think. My philosophy on it is, if we're sitting at 5 years, it's going to be the same cost, basically, one way or the other. I don't want to speak for Nick, but I'm looking at 5 years from now, we would have a new machine. And if we had an old machine, does it cost money to get rid of an old machine? Because these are basically, they go through the health department because they do have, I don't want to say nuclear, but they do have, that type of apparatus in it, so Nick might have a clear answer what he found though.
Our history across every asset that we own is we go well beyond the expected life. So if their expected life is 5, we're typically pushing 8 years on an item. This happens in our fleet. We've looked at leasing across many different parts of what we do for our assets. We're always better off because we use that machine until it can't be used anymore, and then we replace. So if we're replacing it 5 years, the lease is the same. If we can push out to 8 years, we're saving 3 years worth of $40,000 per year before we have to buy that next machine.
But again, if with a lease, does that include all software upgrades and maintenance costs and those type of installation maybe or whatever?
I'm
just looking long-term, because if you're going to put it in, I'm sure you're going to want to keep it in there.
From what I've been told, it does not cover maintenance. Maintenance is a separate fee. This is just to have the device.
A lease does not cover maintenance?
As far as I understood with what I was provided so far, yes. It does not cover the maintenance costs.
When I read their material, it didn't talk about maintenance at all. In fact, I think it did say that they don't cover that. I think it did say that now that I think.
The quote included a 3-year warranty on the machine.
Right.
So.
But if you go out year 4, year 5, you're on your own.
There was an optional 3 years you could add to that warranty that was included in the quote. It just wasn't added in the final price.
Was that $20,000 or something at the end?
I didn't see the exact number. It was around $20,000, but you could extend that warranty for 3 years out beyond that first 3 years.
Okay.
Which if they're willing to warranty it for a second 3-year term, that tells you the life expectancy's got to be more than the 6 years. If they're willing to throw that out beyond the 5-year lease. So there's still that expectation. I think we would go beyond the 5, depending on how the device performs.
Because these have just been admitted into the jails, really, no one has this background of maintenance and problems and everything. There's only a few counties that actually have them fully operational and working. It is a very extensive variance process to get through to even run these machines. The Department of Corrections is putting them in all the prisons. but they're working through the process. Hennepin County, Ramsey County, all the larger facilities in the state have added them. It's getting through this variance process first. So MDH is very strict on doing these machines, and it was a hard battle just to get them allowed in the state of Minnesota. So even if we get approved for this, it's going to be at least a 6-month to 8-month process for us to get this on board and actually operating. There's a lot of training involved with the staff. So my biggest thing is the safety and security of the facility is my job. That's why I'm recommending that we do this. And with that, I think this is one of the best options that we can add, but it's also going to be a large-scale problem for us training the staff to recognize what they're doing with this technology and recognizing what they're looking for. That's what a lot of facilities have told me and talking about this. The other thing is the deterrent effect. Like many things, if I had a dog in my facility, that spreads in the community quickly. People don't try to bring things into my facility. When they know that there's a body scanner, they're not going to try and bring anything to the facility knowing that they're going to get caught, because that's going to equal more charges. So they're very aware of that fact. There are just certain things that we are unable to do now as staff. There are too many places to hide things that we are not allowed to go to. So.
Don't want to go.
Well, exactly. But there's just, for us, it's a bigger and bigger concern. We're having multiple arrests come in, and I know the talk about statistics, but this is probably a weekly occurrence that we're locating items on people coming in, and it's more and more of a concern. I have a thank you card sitting on my desk in my office right now from a young lady who came into our facility, ingested a large amount of drugs, dropped in a holding cell, and we ended up taking her to the hospital. She sent us a card after the fact thanking us for saving her life by Narcanning her and getting her to the hospital quickly. So these are the kinds of things we're trying to get rid of. So.
Okay. You'll bring back a little bit of more information on this one?
And I think what we'll do, I bring back, yes, Steve, I don't know exactly, so I think what we'll do is we'll just get our data and we'll just send it out to you guys.
Okay.
And then any other questions that need for follow-up, we can do in this format, or just call me or whatever works easiest, yeah.
That works. If you send it out to all 5 of us so that we all have that information, I would appreciate that.
Okay.
And that works, good. It's fine.
One other consideration with this too is by purchasing, we believe this qualifies for ARPA dollars as well. There's 2 different categories for prevention in congregate settings. This will have the ability to check temperature, so we can utilize it for preventing SARS-CoV-2 getting into the facility that direction. There's also substance use services called out. This can help us catch that and hopefully get them the services they need as well to help them with their drug issues. So this can potentially qualify for ARPA based on current guidance.
Cool. Okay, I wish these 2 were here to hear that. That would have been nice, because it's nice when we can use those one-off dollars to do some of this.
Paul's on.
Paul's on? Oh, okay. So I think that sheds a little different light on the purchasing of it.
Well, and Nick and I, good point, Steve, but I want to stress the importance for that, for this item. This is, I believe, truly going to be a game changer for us. And just Nick and I were talking about that, and I said it would be great if ARPA would pick up this. I mean, without a doubt, it'd be, it's $200,000. It's a significant amount of money.
Yep.
But I'm kind of glad it didn't come up until now, because I would be pushing just as hard, or I did push just as hard, without you guys having the knowledge of that. Because truly, I'm a taxpayer here. I want this. We need this. We need this. And I truly don't care where the money coming from. This is a tool that is going to, it's going to save lives. And who's it going to save lives? Of the people that we're entrusted to put into custody. That's where it's really going to save lives. The other end of it is the weapons that are being introduced. Weapons are not it's a big deal when a weapon comes into our facility. I mean, it's a very big deal when one is found. And it's concerning. But where this is really going to be the bread on the butter is going to be the drugs that are coming in and getting them medical attention before they have an overdose or die.
And I appreciate what you're saying. I think the need is there regardless of where the dollars come from. It's just, from our perspective,
Absolutely.
It's nice when those dollars can come from another pocket somewhere.
Yeah.
So, all right.
All right. Is there anything else?
To catch you up on that, Doug.
That it potentially qualifies for ARPA?
Good.
So Nick,
One other thing that is not on the list that has come up, and Sheriff, this is for you too. The body cams we've talked about for years. They are not in the 21 plan or in the 22 plan.
the what?
Body cams
Oh, body cams.
on our
Okay.
sheriff's officers and jail staff. They do have a quote for $120,884 for the devices. They do have the $62,000 annual maintenance for these already in their 22 budget. We just don't have anywhere established for the actual body cams to be purchased. They wanted to approach you with a budget amendment for this year. Based on the fact we're in October and we know supply chain issues are what they are, we don't feel the purchase is going to happen until 2022. So we wanted to bring it before you to see if we can include that in the 22 budget to include the body cams for the sheriff's office.
Okay, we've had some preliminary discussions, though, about the responsibility on the backside of it. So we go out there and we film, but we also have to retain the records and
And that-
administer when people request those, so there's another cost to it other than just buying the cameras.
Yes, and we're estimating that cost at 62,000, and it is built into the sheriff's department budget for '22. The purchase is not. Here's what I would suggest. The issue has, really, should we put it in the CIP? It's not capital. What I would suggest is that you fund it out of fund balance and take the fund balance from the CIP fund balance and move it out of CIP and then fund it. It's 6 of one and half dozen of the other, how you're going to fund this, but it's going to come out of fund balance one way or the other.
Are we looking at each of these items as potential use out of the ARP funds?
We are. This one is going to be a challenge to try and actually get that into guidance. Guidance is much more focused on social services aspects than on technology pieces. So we'll try, but I can't really fit this into a category at this point.
And we can't wait on this, so this is what, we've been bobbing this along, grabbing at a gasp of air for a few years now. My hope was that we were going to see some federal funding come down with mandates. If you remember when the state was here a few months back for an update, and they almost bragged about that they're going to give $500,000 out to agencies across the state for body cameras, and I wanted to laugh out loud. I didn't, but I'm kind of like, are you kidding me? We got 87 counties, and that's not counting police departments.
Right.
We can't kick this can anymore. We need them. We just had the incident that hit the paper this last week with us involved with guns drawn, and it's the standard. And, yes, Steve, there is more data, but we're prepared for that. We have a record staff that already provides data from our cameras that are in the squad cars. There's policies, procedures, mandates, laws out there that we have to follow very closely. Everything's already been defined. It's just a matter of us implementing them.
Well, I do support this myself. I've had, again, a discussion with the chief deputy and to protect our officers in the job that they have to do out there. I think it's critical that we provide them with that sort of safety net.
And that's where the loudest voice that we're hearing is coming from, is our officers saying, I want this, I need this, I want protection. Because the allegation can be thrown out there, and I see good and I see bad with any technology, but the messaging has been very strong for the last, I would say, 3 years from our staff of we need this on us. And when they're wanting this, that says a lot, because they're intrusive. They're very intrusive, You accidentally leave it on and you're having a conversation, lighthearted conversation, and you would not believe some of the cop jokes that are out there. They're intrusive. They're very intrusive. So they want them and they need them.
Well, all of us civilians have our body cameras,
Yep,
so
yep,
I think
exactly.
it's only fair that our officers have a comparable rebut to what I'm showing. So, so I think that's, to me, it's appropriate to do it, but
I'd agree.
a lot of head nodding up here in the positive, so.
Thank you, folks. I appreciate it. Data will be coming shortly. We'll try to get your questions answered. Anything else, Nick?
Nope. All I've got on the list right now that we're waiting for additional information on is going to be the asphalt for the cold storage. We're looking for a new quote there. the removal of the rifle range improvements, some further information from the sheriff. Other than that, all these other projects we're comfortable allowing to stay in the CIP.
Yep.
Okay. With that, knowing supply chain issues, if we're comfortable going forward, are you comfortable with staff starting the ordering process on these, particularly fleet?
Yes.
Knowing that we're looking at 6 to 12 to 18 months before we get some of these things in, can they start that ordering process now to allow us to make sure we get some of these items in 2022? We have done this about 4 or 5 years ago when I was in highway. We did approach this because we had plow trucks that we knew were being told to us it's 12, 13 months out before you're going to get the truck, and then to ensure that the expense hits in our 22 budget, we ordered early. This doesn't mean they'll spend the money in 21, it's just allowing them to get them on order so we ensure we get them.
I got a quick question too. We talked about Gary's, the increase in the cost of that, and I think there's, what, 5 or 6 new squads? Is that contract still valid for those, or are we going to expect to see a higher priced? Joe here?
Those contracts still are valid.
Okay.
They still are open.
So those numbers are solid in there?
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could I'd like to ask Tim to address the downside of doing this, committing to that today?
I think it makes sense in some cases. I don't know that I think it would make sense as carte blanche, but a vehicle, we know, we have experience with how long that is taking, and so our risk is we don't order it till January, we won't see it till 2023, and it hits the wrong budget year. So you can move the money between the budget years if you need to in order to make that work out, but I would not want to see carte blanche authority to do that. I would like to see a list of what's being proposed, and then you can evaluate it for the degree to which it makes sense to you. I think it's a decent idea for the right things.
Okay, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
So we'd like to see a list.
We'll have staff put that together and get that out too.
Good, thank you.
Okay. All right, we covered the operational budget discussion portion. Is there anything further that you want to talk about on the operational side?
Nothing.
Okay. And on health insurance, there really hasn't been changed there since preliminary at all. Moving into our countywide financial status update.
I'm going to run to the relief room again.
You want to take a
break?
Break?
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
I do want to acknowledge, though, before we do, Nancy, who's the only female that stayed in this room when we started talking about all these kind of cars and equipment things, so thank you very much. Everyone else left. They couldn't take our conversations. So Nick?
Technology's got to catch up to me here.
Okay.
There we go. All right, we are on our final item for the day, the countywide financial status update. To be honest, it's not much different than the last few months. We are repeating basically the exact same comments on every single one of these slides because we're facing the exact same savings in certain areas and the same challenges in getting revenues in the other portions.
As you get later into the year, you've told the story. So you end up repeating it.
Go through it again.
You don't need to.
You don't need to. If you're comfortable with the notes that I've provided, and if, I mean, if you have any questions, you can let me know either now or follow up later, and we can skip through it.
It's your call. I would tell you that I think we're right on where we think we should be. We're doing well on revenue, and we're doing well on expense.
Farming in most things, so I'm fine.
That's the summary.
We're doing very well across the board.
Yeah. We will, if everything continues, we should have a fairly nice fund balance build at the end of the year from operations.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
If everybody else
There's
is.
only one slide in here that I just want to talk about real briefly, and that's the cash flow one. Our unrestricted cash flows look very positive in September. Part of this is due to a shifting of funds from the Fund 85, which we set up for CARES Act. We left funding in there until the auditors cleared everything, and we had a clear vision of where that funding needed to go. That has since been shifted out of that restricted over to the Fund 1, which is unrestricted. So our unrestricted cash position looks very well this month because we absorbed $2 million extra of unrestricted funds. We did also take that funding and some of our CDs, we shifted that over to the trust fund in Bremer to try and capture some additional interest rates. We're getting closer to that 1.5% to 2% there versus the CDs still, I think our last quote was 0.38 for a 5-year. And we're not comfortable tying up the funds for that long at that low of an interest rate, so we shifted it to the trust fund in an effort to get better returns, so we're getting better use out of that funding while it sits, and still allow us that liquidity of being able to pull the funding out if we need to touch it.
If we didn't have those CARES Act dollars in there, where would that column be?
We would be probably very much in line with 2019. We probably would have seen that negative back in June. It probably would have been a little bit less than what we had in 2019, or sorry, 2020. But we would have seen it improving. We are in a better position with our cash or our fund balances. We did get a significant boost to general funds fund balance with CARES, and that really is what allowed us to get that really quick correction.
Okay, because when I looked at it, I thought, wow, we're sitting pretty good, but when you say that some of those dollars will go away, once the auditors...
The other thing is, we pulled money out of investments
Right.
in order to cash flow. And so what Nick is telling you also is that we're putting that money back. As part of that fund balance growth strategy, as we don't need it for cash flow, we can invest it for longer, but we needed it for cash flow. So he is putting those funds back into investments.
And one thing that skews this chart a little bit too is our prior investments in our CDs, those were fixed 5-year, 10-year CDs. We didn't have any liquidity. We couldn't pull those out. So those got restricted and pulled out of this number. The funding or the investing that we're doing now actually keeps them liquid, so they stay in unrestricted because we can go touch those funds if we need to get them. So this number gets artificially inflated because those investments are now reflected on this side versus the part you didn't get to see.
So we're working back to where we were, which is part of our plan.
The strategy.
Yep.
Okay, that's good news.
I have a couple items.
Go ahead.
One, I did get a quote for your microphone replacement. The quote came back from Digital Horizons at $3,216. What would you like me to do?
It's a lot different than the 70,000.
Pardon?
Better than 70,000.
Yeah, it is better than 70,000. What would you like to do?
We need to put them in.
I don't care. I'm used to these, but
But, I mean, when I was at City Hall, I mean, those were convenient, they really were. I did like those. Tim's brings up the point of the fact of not getting recorded.
You capture everything now, and you have to push to not get recorded. When you have to push to record, I guarantee that people will not push to record. Some people, and think about our presenters, they're not used to pushing buttons, but it's up to you. I think it will change the problem from right now, which is absolutely everything you say, right? And that is, I understand that problem. 2, they're going to miss pertinent stuff. So I have erred on the side of let them have because there's really not much there anyway, but I don't care if anybody hears me talking between recesses or meetings, and it doesn't bother me, but it has bothered you guys to an extent. I want you to understand the trade-off there is we're going to lose pertinent details that the public won't hear.
I think so. I don't think we're that incompetent.
I don't think it's just you. I think it's the people sitting there, people standing there.
It's
your call.
It's all this.
well, we could think about it and
Yeah,
I got the
discuss it.
quote for whenever you guys want to do something. So and now you know it's relatively inexpensive. What do you want me to do?
Okay.
I need a little more time to think about it.
Okay. Second item I have, and this is, Doug, we had talked about this. This is imagery for the recreational trail. The Cruiser's Kettle Trail that I've been keeping you guys up to date on. We sought a quote to increase the, here, let me pass these around. 3-inch obliques, 6-inch obliques, orthos, and there's different clarity. This is probably the best one, I would say, these two. The question is, should we have a higher level of clarity where, on our flyover for our GIS system, because that's what dispatch uses, should we have a higher level of clarity in those areas where we have the recreational trails? That the dispatchers need to be able to see a higher level of clarity to direct people correctly, because it's not, it's not like a house with an address. They're somewhere on the trail, so trail markers and the like. So we got a quote for doing that. The quote for doing that would be, it's 18 square miles, $6,400 additional to do that. We do get the higher resolution already, where the city of Baxter partners with us to do that. So we buy the base layer, they buy the add-on, and we all benefit from the add-on. I was just talking to Gary too, and we are being opportunistic, but we just learned that yesterday we sold another $200,000 worth of property. You want to consider a higher level of resolution for the entire county? You could, but so anyway, it came out of that one narrow issue, and I have a price for that one narrow issue. Or if you want, we could have a conversation about funding the whole county. I think we have the resources to do it.
Looks like the sheriff has an opinion.
Yes, the higher resolution helps us on every level, for search warrants, for when we're looking for a person, property. I mean, just giving us an idea where roads are. If you go back in the picture there, and I'll give you an example. Can we go back to that, Therese?
Yeah, if it's got,
Gary, can you pull that up, please?
yeah, Gary's got it. There you go.
Go with the 30-degree angle. There we go. Yeah. So when we do warrants, we will actually use this exact information internally. I can tell a lot by, say it's a smaller house, looking at, when I start looking at different angles, all 4 sides of the house, I can pretty much tell you where the bathroom is, where the kitchen is, where our exits and entrances are. So this helps us, yes, it helps us quite often. And if the bang for the buck is there, it's not just the trail area.
What's the cost, Gary?
Sorry, my screen, or when I'm presenting, I can't see the best. It is roughly, if we did the whole county, it'd be $324 per square mile. Roughly, we're 990 square miles. We already have a contract in place at $142,000 over 3 years. The difference between, and that's at 6-inch. To do 3-inch for the whole county, we'd be about $175,000 to $180,000 more. If I could, I would share that here is our projection. Currently in our apportionment, we are looking at this. This was as of yesterday. And again, I apologize, the financials end on the 10th of each month. So when Jessica finally got looking at, what kind of money did we bring in September? As of today, we would be apportioning 1.167 roughly, and we still got October, November, and December to go. If we were to take another $170,000 out of this apportionment and do 3-inch for the whole county, which definitely benefits our planning and zoning, our assessing. Of course, you've heard from the sheriff. I'm sure highway would hop in there too. We still would be at an apportionment, I know, over $1 million out to our, you'll see where it goes, rec fund, CIP, general, cities and schools. So there is an opportunity here. Why I kind of am bringing this really quickly, if we were to do a 3-inch when I called the company, because we have to, right now we're already in the queue with pilots in their airplanes to come up here to fly our county. To switch over to 3-inch, we need to have that in the queue before November 1st, or we just stick with what we already have. So and that's good too. We were content with that. This is another level of clarity, really, for a lot of different departments that would be very useful. But we want to just kind of pitch that out there.
So we can move forward with what we're doing on the imagery, no change, don't do anything different. We could move forward and add higher resolution just in the area of the rec area and Cruiser's Kettle Trail. That would cost us $6,400 additional dollars. We could use the proceeds from land sales to do the entire county for an additional $170,000, roughly. Now, so it's a big expense. We are being opportunistic. So we're okay, though, with any of the options that you choose, so.
So what are we currently doing for this oblique?
6-inch.
We're
Aren't
doing
we, or are we
6.
doing 9, Gary?
Currently, we have 9, so if you go onto our website, look at the interactive maps, that's 9-inch, except for the city of Baxter. We are contracted at the 6-inch, if you see on the screen. That's what we are in the queue for LEFA spring flyover in 22. And then just the discussion today is we have an option if we wanted to do the best that is out there, which definitely seems like it's going to increase safety, really assist sheriffs. It definitely is going to assist land services big time. I don't want to speak for Tim Bray, but we have had conversations before that is definitely beneficial to his staff as well. But that's the discussion.
So does the 170 buy the 3-inch then? Is what we're saying?
Yes.
Correct. Yep, that
For the
gets us
entire
home.
county.
Yep.
Correct.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I'm okay with the 3-inch. This is Paul Coring.
yes. Okay, thank you, Paul.
Yep.
We have to bring you a budget amendment if you want to do anything. So it's kind of what do you guys think? Do you think it makes sense to do the whole county, or do you want to just do Cruiser's Kettle, or do you want to do nothing?
Well, I think, as the discussion started, we talked about the rec area and the other.
That was the.
Yeah, and I guess maybe one quick question. I will say that I support it countywide because I think there's much greater benefits to other departments than just those two areas. But when they pull up say they get a call out to the Cruiser's Kettle Trail system, do they pull up this actual aerial, or do they have a map that has all the mile markers, and how is that exactly done at dispatch? I've heard both kind of scenarios, and I'm not sure what is the correct one.
Good question, Doug. Really, they use everything. Depending on the situation at hand, we use every resource that we have. So the CAD mapping system is a little bit different than this. But all of our dispatchers are very talented at knowing what we need when we're in the field. And this isn't just for dispatch. This is also for our staff that are out in the field. And we all have computers in the car. We have, for the most part, great service throughout our entire county where we can pull this up, so say we're searching for a child, and the child is known to know water, and, we're looking for those small trails that are leading maybe to that. The more definition that we're gonna get, the better off we are. And that's exactly what we're looking for the trail system we have now, is identifying that, leaves off, identifying, I think Gary mentioned that, leaves off identifying where the trails are. They're goat trails, they're not 2 foot wide. They're gonna be hard to spot. The pictures in comparison to how we used to do things with literally a plat book, if you go back 20 years, it will be a benefit to us. It will be used.
And I guess I'm assuming maybe they use both.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, they do. Yeah, I'm sorry, if I didn't clarify. Yes, they use both. They use any and all resource out there. If this is the best definition we're gonna get, this is gonna be the use that's gonna be most grabbed, yes.
And if this is done, with leaves off, you'll see the trails, but if you looked at it, prior to that, you wouldn't see these trails because some of them are only a foot wide, if that. So anything we could do to help, I think, improve the safety of not just Cruiser's Kettle, but other recreational, the fire tower, we assume we'll have trails at some day. And I just think there's much greater benefit to do it countywide than just a select area.
Yep.
I hear a consensus around that.
Bring us an amendment.
You're wrong. Otherwise, I will bring you the budget amendment.
Yes.
Okay?
Thank you, Paul.
That is all we have.
And with that, we are adjourned. We'll move on to